Welcome to the Catching Up podcast, where we move at the speed of conversation. I'm Harry.
And I'm Max.
And today, we'll be catching up on Avengers Endgame. So, Max, what did you think of Avengers Endgame?
I've been saying this to a few people who have asked. I feel like it was the Dark Knight Rises to the Dark Knight. It was good, but I think, personally, Infinity War took the cake. And I think that was to be expected for most people. I don't know how you feel about that analogy.
Yeah, no, I think most people that I've heard from have said the exact same thing, that Infinity War is superior. I think, though, that they are sort of... they can't be one without the other. Like, Infinity War wouldn't have been as momentous as it was without the idea that there is going to be an aftermath of it. And the aftermath of Infinity War is exactly what was captured in the film. With all of the flaws that we will probably get into, I still think that it's a solid movie. I mean, as all of the Avengers movies have been, I would give all of them at least a 7 out of 10 just for the hard work and effort anyway. But I mean, this one takes it all to brand new heights anyway, and it is still a really decent movie. I'm happy with the way it was, but it does have that same that it's difficult to resist the notion that anything could potentially be better than Infinity War just because of the way that it ends. But at the same time, they're a matching pair. But yeah, I would definitely say just on a very, very tiny little basis that the Infinity War does just take the cake.
I mean, sort of from a philosophical perspective, but humans like tragedy. It's the reason why Empire Strikes Back is considered to be better than Return of the Jedi type deals. You know, we like when things have gone wrong. We like that the heroes are now in their low point, and we like that there is a ditch that they have to climb out of. We don't necessarily enjoy the entertainment of them climbing out of the ditch. I suppose it's the expectation subversion of always thinking that the heroes are going to win. We like the idea that we have ended on that everyone has lost and that there is tragedy. And I suppose drama in that stage.
There is also something very satisfying about the fact that the heroes that have appeared to be near enough invincible this whole time have now been really just, without any real effort on the bad guys' part, to just end their lives in a matter of seconds, and there wouldn't have been anything they could do about it. Like he says, he is inevitable. It's like there is something so sinisterly intriguing, I will say, about the nemesis of these movies. He's definitely better than most of the other bad guys that they've come up with, and I think that is something that Marvel does tend to suffer from. But at the same time, when they're able to produce something as chaotic as Thanos on screen like that, and I mean, Josh Brolin just brings such presence to the character. I know that he's all CG anyway, but it still feels like a very bad person there. I don't know whether he was sort of filmed or in like one of those suits or not. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
believe it was mocap, same as the Hulk, which is where they're dressed up in the skin tight suit with all the tennis balls attached to them, and they track the movements.
Okay.
But I mean, he had to be, didn't he? I mean, this was 10 years in the making. This wasn't a typical Iron Man villain. This wasn't a typical one shot, kind of guy. Not even a Loki, who we have come to know and love. This was the ultimate. This was the inevitable. This was the 10 years project, which has now come to face. And I think it is a great tribute that they have managed to pull it off, because they could have very easily screwed it up, and that would have been very disappointing, of course. But
or given up.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you find it in the cinema? What as for a viewing experience? I think that's a good place to start for this podcast.
Well, I went and saw it at best possible place I think anyone could have picked to go and see it. This is so. I mean, this will be a little tangent anyway, but so I went and saw it at the BFI IMAX at Waterloo in London, and honestly, I have never seen an auditorium like it. It was the closest thing I could compare it to is the theatre, except it's not the theatre. It is so bloody big and I had to wait 2 weeks for decent seats for it. Like, I mean, because I'm not too desperate to see the. I wasn't too desperate to see this movie anyway. I wanted to go and see it, but I wasn't gonna see it on day one. I wasn't going to go to a midnight screening of Infinity War and then Endgame. Like I just can't sit through 6 hours of Marvel. I can just about sit through 3, but but either way, like the cinema was great. It was absolutely massive. And the only problem with it was the seating. And that's probably just because I'm now accustomed to going to and seeing films in comfy reclining leather chairs. But this was like the old fashioned, literally like a theatre, fold out
oh wow,
seats. And the view was great. And I can completely justify the wait, like the 2 week wait, because if I was down on the front row, I would have been so angry. Like I don't know how anyone would have been able to keep their head lifted up for that long without craning, and I was getting a bit uncomfortable anyway, just sitting on the back row. But like it honestly, and this was in 3D IMAX as well, and I was thinking, oh wow, 3D. And no, but this is hang on to your horses. I know that sigh. I know that sigh. Yep. Honestly, the 3D was okay.
Oh.
It wasn't like some bits were like quite in your face, but it was obviously not made for things to be flying in your face, because everyone knows those tricks at this point when they go and see a 3D movie. But at the same time, because it was in IMAX and it felt like a 3-dimensional movie that I was watching. It like the depth of field was really well done. I don't know technologically how it's done, but I know that was something that I did appreciate. And I'll say that it's better for movies like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because I saw that in 3D IMAX and really enjoyed that. Probably enjoyed that more than Endgame, but only because I think that when you have such high quality visuals and it's all in 3D, everything is exposed, and including all of the kind of green screen stuff. But I'm sure we can go on to that anyway. You might have picked up on this. How was your experience for you, Max, at the cinema?
Well, I saw it at View, and we had the lovely, comfy recliner seats that feel like that they were built for a giant. You can effectively fall asleep in them. I didn't see it within the first couple of days. I saw it, I think, the weekend after it came out, and I wasn't going to skimp on, seating arrangements. So we made sure to go and see it at a time when we could get moderately good seats. They weren't the best seats in the house, but they were the seats just off of the center row. They were, I think, 2 or 3 rows back. Which is not a problem for these giant recliners. And yeah, I mean, I can safely say that I was thoroughly entertained. I was, the chills were there when they needed to be. The spectacle was grand, and I think I was fully satisfied for a cinematic experience.
Did you get any food or drink whilst you were at paying a visit?
No, I goddamn didn't. God, bloody popcorn munchers.
Oh, the prices are so bad.
Yeah,
but that's Disney's fault, not the cinema's fault. Do you know about this?
I didn't know about that.
Well, I mean, I can only guess. I'm just a lowly individual going and seeing the films. But as far as I can tell, I think this also could be a rumor. But I think I was informed by somebody that so at cinemas they normally like the tickets and sales and such ticket sales, actually, yeah, specifically, it's like 50-50. The 50% of it goes to the actual cinema itself, and the other 50 goes to the distributors and the film industry. Whereas Disney has now changed this around for their films, so it's now 60-40. So the distributors and the rest get a larger portion of the money, and so obviously the cinemas have to get money from other places such as food and drink. And then you get extortionate prices like a bag of fruit pastels for $3.49. Thank you, Odeon. I will never buy anything from you ever.
That's interesting though, because sure, they've increased that distribution, but I mean, I don't know for you, but I was looking through the Endgame seatings and they were fully booked for a good week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Even with that 60-40 split, I can imagine this movie has made them an incredible amount of money.
Oh yeah, I think I read somewhere that it made more money than Titanic.
Nice. Yeah.
Like, this is the scale of this movie.
Well, obviously, Avengers Endgame is a more important historical event than the Titanic, so you know.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
what? Just for the structure of this, before we go off on too many tangents, what are we expecting from this podcast? I think we can say that we're going to break it down into sort of three acts, as it were. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like the movie was split into three. You had the first part where everyone was still melancholy and quite sad about everything, which was obviously good for the reasons that we'll get into, or bad or for other reasons. You then got the middle section with the time heist and all of the shenanigans that go on there, and then you sort of have the third act, which is from when they stop doing the time heist, I suppose, and sort of the finale, as it were. I mean, it works out quite well because it was a 3-hour movie, so it was sort of like an hour of very distinct movie segments, I believe.
It's I would say that we should, we'll work through it that way, like chronologically. I think though that the way that you had laid that out, that it was an hour each, I think is from my experience, I thought that the sort of melancholy part of it didn't last for particularly long, because obviously
you're probably right.
Kind of it set the whole thing that gets set off is. The character that sets the whole thing off is Ant-Man, who obviously is stuck in the microverse for several years, and thus why he's not helping out in Infinity War. Just out of curiosity, Max, have you seen Ant-Man and the Wasp yet?
I have.
Ah, good. Okay, well, that can be for another video, I'm sure. But Ant-Man comes out as the catalyst for the main story, doesn't he? And I seem to remember that getting him rambling on about the quantum stuff being quite early in the film. So I only picked up on that point because I think that it jumps into itself a little bit too quickly. I mean, that this might just be because, and it might have occurred after the decapitation of Thanos. I can't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was definitely afterwards, because
it was afterwards.
Ant-Man comes out after the 5-year break, and Thanos is killed only 23 days after the decimation, they call it, which is a silly name considering what decimation means. I mean,
what does decimation mean?
Don't you remember from good old the Master when he said, let's decimate the population? I like that word, decimate. Remove 1/10 of the population. That's what it means to remove 1/10. Decimate. Deci is 10. The Roman legionaries would do it when, I think it was when they disobeyed orders, or if they were failures, they would decimate their legion as to remove 1/10 of their legion as a punishment.
Maybe he.
Where he removed 50%, so that's definitely not a decimation.
That's now that you mention it, I was thinking it could be a pent decimation.
Christ.
Now it just sounds terrible.
Like I know it's a cool sounding word, but honestly, when people use the description word, he decimated them, it's not actually that impressive. You've only removed 10% of whatever it was that you were trying to destroy. So if you decimate a castle, that's not that impressive, or not really anyway.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that particular episode of Doctor Who up, because now that you mention it, like I thought, wow, getting rid of half the population sounds like the most original idea ever, but it's probably not, is it? I could be wrong. Like, maybe it is something that's brand new. Maybe it's just the scale of the movie that's brought it into public consciousness. I don't know.
I mean, also it's sort of like a cosmic, mystical level, isn't it? You know, all he had to do was click his fingers, type thing. But
yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
What was your thoughts on the sort of opening scenes of it? I personally felt really glad that they lingered on this melancholy atmosphere. I would have been very, very sad if the opening scenes were like, you know, the typical Avengers music, the da-da-dun, da-da-dun, dun, da-da-dun, and then we see like them all gearing up and like, you know, getting ready, and it's like, oh yeah, we're getting into it. We didn't get that, which is great.
Well, yeah, if you could imagine it being done by anybody else, the film would have started with Thor decapitating Thanos.
That's it.
And then we would have had da, 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 and the titles come up, and then it would have just got on with it. But the opening scene in particular, with Hawkeye's family, was crushing. Like it really. On the one hand, for the people that did watch Infinity War and then Endgame back to back, I can definitely say that would be a great idea. Like, even as a trilogy, like, if Thor Ragnarok, then Infinity War, and then Endgame, like, that is just a great trilogy in itself. Obviously, you do have to watch all of the kind of precursors to it anyway, but as a story in itself, it works really well. And the beginning of Endgame works to kind of tie everything together really nicely so that it can go off onto its own paths with all the time travel stuff.
It makes it feel a lot like a second part to a movie rather than a sequel with that Hawkeye scene, because you can, you know, at the end of Infinity War, we get all the scenes of everyone starting to disappear. We even get the after credit scene of Nick Fury disappearing. It would have made logical sense that if these movies were tied together, the scene after Nick Fury being dusted would be seeing this Hawkeye and his family scene. I thought that was very good, and you know, whether they did it to try and stifle the blow, I don't know, but I really did enjoy that their disappearance was off screen, because I felt like that we didn't need to be hit with that bullet again. We already had Peter Parker doing the like super jacked up emotion. We already had Nick Fury doing the motherfucker, you know, before he gets dusted. We already had the, you know, everyone dusting away. It was sort of like, we know what happened. Hawkeye doesn't. And so we're seeing it from his perspective in the very opening scenes. And I liked that. If he had seen them be dusted and we had seen them be dusted, it would have felt a little bit repetitive. And I feel like that there was a lot of respect from the direction there in the opening scenes towards the audience to say, look, we're not going to make you sit through that again, but we need to catch you up with Hawkeye.
I think that what it does also is, I mean, obviously it does set the tone for the movie anyway, and like I say, connects Infinity War together with it really well. But on another level, this is what is happening everywhere. Like the fact that it's set, I mean, I don't know if we had seen him and his, I'm sure we have seen him and his family at some point or another, but I don't recall them ever having given us this massive visual cue of, look how much space there is around him. There is, I mean, I'm just thinking about the scene in particular and how they are kind of, what would you call it? Like, they're not
in the middle of nowhere.
They are in the middle of nowhere, I suppose, but in the sense that they are isolated. That was the word I was looking for. And they're not in a city where we have kind of seen all of the disappearing happening. You know, everyone is reacting to it at once. They are sort of fed the information immediately, whereas from his point of view, they just vanish. And it's not like he can turn around to some other guy in the street and say, "Where did my family go?" He's on his own. Like, it's just happening. And that the emotional weight of that moment it resonates all the way through the whole planet. Like, it's not just him. This is going to be happening on such a huge scale that, like, it's just a total nightmare. And I think that is what that scene achieved just beautifully.
Yeah, and I mean, it also very much tries to link in these like darker ideas that they never directly address. But you see Hawkeye, he loses his whole family. Like, there'd be occasions where a young child loses both of their parents and is then obviously effectively left to die themselves because they can't look after themselves. You've got probably parents who have just only lost their children, and they've got to live with the ramifications of their children have gone. It would be a lot more chaotic and a lot more nightmarish, like you say, than what we're given on screen. But they don't need to show that on screen because we can work that out for ourselves.
Exactly.
I think while we're talking about Hawkeye, I think it'd be probably quite smooth if we just continue talking about his character, perhaps, for that first act of the movie before they rope him in to the whole time heist scenario. I really am interested anyway on knowing what your thoughts of the way they portray him are, because I've seen quite a few comments from people saying that they felt like it was unnecessary, they felt like it was random, they felt like it was just not good, I suppose. But
sorry, what are you referring to specifically? Like a particular scene that he was in?
Well, if you want to talk about
like his okay.
If you want to talk about a specific scene, the Tokyo scene. I've seen a few people, they've thrown out the idea of then we got this random scene with Hawkeye in Tokyo and he's killing these like mob bosses type thing. And I don't know, maybe I've just been looking at certain people who didn't like it, but I've seen not unhappiness, but a lot of people didn't really seem to gel with the story that we got for Hawkeye, of that once his family had gone, he then went on this sort of crusade himself to liberate the Earth from these bad people, and that the Avengers had kept tabs on him. But there was a scene of I can't remember, was it Cap talking to Black Widow, and someone says something to the notions of, maybe we don't want to find Clint because we're scared to see what he's perhaps become, because he's been doing all these really sort of edgy things to these people. Like, they mentioned that he's killed these Mexican cartels in really brutal ways, and they've really nailed home the idea that Clint has broken as a man, and he's now this sort of like almost like a zealot, like a religious crusader doing something in the name of a higher power, but there is no higher power. He's doing it for his own sake. So yeah, I felt like a discussion was needed about him and his character change.
Okay, like his transformation.
Yeah,
I suppose.
exactly.
Honestly, I didn't even give it that much thought, because he isn't like, I mean, I've always felt that he's a side character for the Avengers, and he is interesting. Like, otherwise I wouldn't have, given all that praise to the opening scene. But I think that because a lot of his involvement is sort of put under the rug, like, in a sense, I think that that's probably just because of his character being a side character. It's irritating to have a character tell us that he killed a Mexican cartel or whatever, because I do remember them mentioning it, but I didn't even realize it was in relation to Hawkeye. Like, I just remember the line of dialogue, but it for some reason didn't clock in that it was him. And I remember the scene in Tokyo more vividly, and it did seem kind of out of place, but at the same time, just from a simplistic point of view, I I'll let them get away with having him sort of strangely transform. 5 years is a long time. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that he did quote unquote change into a sort of assassin for good, but at the same time it was just another instance of, right, we need to rope you back into the Avengers because they need you again. Like that was all that seemed to, for me, to be his purpose. And of course, when we get to his scene with Black Widow, it obviously changes things around a bit. But if we're sticking to the first act, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Well, I thought it was quite interesting because if the direction of the film was that they just wanted Hawkeye to be back with the team, then wouldn't it have been simpler and easier to have just had the story been that when his family disappeared, he went to the Avengers compound and he's been helping them for the past 5 years?
That would make more sense.
But they didn't, and they very specifically didn't. And maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but I really, really liked that he went off the rails and like that. Black Widow is talking about how she doesn't really have a purpose in life, and that this, whatever they're doing right now, is the only thing that's keeping her sane, I suppose. And Captain America, he's going to these sort of like Alcoholic Anonymous kind of groups, but instead it's talking about the dusting and that. Obviously, you've got Denver, Captain Marvel. She's off doing actual stuff all over the galaxy. And, they're talking about very earthly problems with these earthquakes going on and stuff like that. And they're just trying to get by. They're trying to help people. The Avengers has turned more into like a peacekeeping force, or like an aid force almost. And so I kind of liked that they spent some time showing us that not everyone just folded in to this group and is like helping everyone. I liked that they showed what would happen on the darker side of the world from this catastrophe happening, and that sure, he was a side character so they could afford to do it, but Hawkeye had this transformation. And not only that, but I mean, again, maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but when that Tokyo scene was on, I was really enthralled by it. I felt the camera angles were really intriguing. The sweeping motions that it was making were very unique to this movie in that there's not really anything that Marvel really does before. It felt like a completely different tone, and even with the subtitles, they followed each of the character as they were sort of moving in clockwise motions around each other in this sort of like Ip Man styled like katana face-off type thing. It really felt like that a different director had been in charge of that specific scene. Almost like a very short origin story for Hawkeye of like, oh, and this is where we found Hawkeye type thing. Like it, I don't know. I really liked it artistically. I felt like it did really, really well. And when Black Widow turns up and he's effectively saying to her, I'm not really the guy that you know anymore. You should leave. And she's like, well, no, you helped me out in a rough spot, so I'm going to help you out now. I don't know. Maybe I am thinking about it too much, but I really, really, really liked all of the stuff with Hawkeye up to the Tokyo scene. I thought it was really refreshing.
He was definitely one of the more interesting narrative elements in the opening sections. I think that you might be feeling that way about the Tokyo scene, because if you remember in Black Panther, they have another scene of violence, and well, that's a chase sequence in Black Panther. Where is it? Seoul, South Korea. Yeah. And they love filming in those eastern cities. So it may be the sway of the city itself more than perhaps the actual story, because like I said, I honestly, those bits weren't anything that I would have come home and started raving about. It's probably because it's just the opening scene for me that really stuck in my head, because it did so much despite telling so little. That's what the less is more kind of analogy works really well with that particular scene. But at the same time, it like I say, the scene is it comes into my head when you mention it, but to actually elaborate on it from my point of view, I can't really say much.
So what out of all the opening scenes that were in that first act, let's say, what were there any that you were disappointed with? Any that you felt like was a little bit too far, or?
Well, it depends on whether we're going to sort of go into the return of. Okay. Well, I was just about to move on to Ant-Man's sort of inclusion, but that's after the first bit. Now that you mention it, I was actually kind of happy with the actual decapitation scene,
yep.
Just because it on the one hand, it held up the prospect of there is not going to be any more Thanos. That is like that as an idea would be perfect, because obviously, he has already done what he needed to do. And the ending scene of Infinity War just says it all as well, that like it doesn't matter now. He's done it. Even if you killed him, it wouldn't matter. And I think that's what haunted Thor.
For sure.
In Endgame, that would make him become this fat oaf, alcoholic loser, if you like. But like I said, yeah, we can go on to that anyway. But that particular scene was effective in reducing the antagonist and sort of introducing the idea that we're now going to witness the aftermath of the vanishing, the decimation, whatever we want to call it now. Because of the way it suddenly cut off, I think I was just happy that they were leaving Thanos behind.
Yeah,
but,
and
I mean, obviously, he does come back anyway.
I think credit should really be given to the writers for resisting the urge to have a fight then and there. I know that 90% of other film writers probably would have had him lose, but they would have had a big fight. Because they would have thought that, people want to see Thanos fighting, type thing. But it was more effective that he effectively was submissive to everything that they were doing. He didn't put up a fight at all, I don't think. I think they ambushed him. But even with that, they subdue him so quickly and easily. And I felt that was so effective because, especially for Thor, you see him, he decapitates him, and he walks off into the sunset, and it's just a black screen, because it's a hollow victory. It doesn't really feel like you've won. And that's what he says, this, everything that he has done has already happened. They get to kill him, but what does that really achieve? Nothing.
I can imagine the same kind of discomfort riding through the people that, were perhaps at the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War.
Exactly.
After huge millions of people dying has already happened.
Right.
That you can't bring them back. Like at the same time. That was just something that popped into my head.
You might think and feel like when they were on their journey there, they were like, oh yeah, let's kill this son of a bitch type thing. They're very pumped for the idea, but it's not until they get there and they realize he's just an old withering husk now. He's not a threat. He's not anything really. He's a pilgrim who has finished their religious journey, and he's now effectively in retirement, and they've just come into the old people's home and just decapitated one of the orderlies and one of the OAPs. And it is very much the case of immediately they say, what have you done? And Thor just said, I went for the head, because that's all he has to live for now. That is the summation of regret in his mind for that moment and for the next 5 years of, why didn't I go for the head? Why was I arrogant? Why did I want to get that last look in his eyes before killing him? Because had I not, none of this would happen. He is right in that he says that he thinks this is all his fault. And sure, of course, he was the only one who could really do what he did. But yeah, had he had gone for the head, like Thanos said, I know it's a meme, but none of that would have happened. And Thor feels responsible for that. And he gets what he wants short term by killing Thanos. But ultimately, Thanos had the last laugh. It was a hollow victory. It was not what Thor wanted. You know, I imagine it was sort of like when you get those urges that you really want to eat something that you shouldn't, and or like do something that you shouldn't, or and then you do it, and you get that short-term adrenaline of that was really great, and then equally you're like, fuck, though that was really bad. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't get anything from it. There was no urge. There was no ride anymore. It was good. And when they cut to black, there was a good solid 6 to 10 seconds of blackness that makes you really reflect on, oh wow, they did it. They managed to kill Thanos. You feel hollow as well because you feel unsatisfied. There was no big fight.
Yeah, there's another 2 hours, 45 minutes of runtime still left to go.
It. And it was so great that they cut him short. I wasn't under any impressions that was the last of him. I did feel like that we were going to get Thanos at the end, but it did make me gracious to the fact that he wasn't going to be like a looming boogeyman in the background anymore. The fact that he was dead meant that we could stop worrying about him and we could focus on something else. But there was no way, like Thanos was such a great character, there was no way that he was only going to have that 15 minutes and then that's it. I mean, it would have been very bold if they had, but they didn't. So then, perfect segue then into Thor. How did you feel about him? Beatnik Thor.
I've heard a lot. When we first saw him, and like, I don't know what the name of the character that Taika Waititi plays is called. The guy who was sat on playing Fortnite on the TV. He is such a welcome inclusion, and I love his transformation. Like, I think that just because 5 years goes by, and it's unfortunate that some of the characters don't really seem to change that much. Like, I don't think that Captain America changed that much, and neither did Black Widow. But like, I'll take Iron Man, Thor, and Hawkeye as the sort of most dramatic transformations over that time period. And I'll say Thor was one of the ones that I really did appreciate, because in a way he's kind of become his father. And I'm not too familiar with like any lore surrounding Odin or what he did or didn't do in war, because like I remember watching the Thor movies, but I'm sure they mentioned something at some point. And obviously his dad is Odin is a fat guy who's lost his eye, and now look at Thor, he is literally almost the same thing. And it's, I mean, I don't know about the alcoholic part of it, but I just thought it was a really interesting transformation, and it did feel like Waititi had his fingers in that scene. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that Korg turned up as Taika Waititi, because I really didn't expect that. And I'll get onto it later, but there was a lot of cameos in this movie, which I really never expected. The fact he was in it, I was pleasantly surprised at. But I think Fat Thor was great, and you know, the cinema was erupting in laughter for that entire scene.
Same.
But I think the novelty wore off very quickly, because I don't think they went hard enough into it. They added all of this weight to his belly, but nothing else. Like, you know, his arms, his face, you know, everything else, they looked the same. And sure, he had a long beard, but it did just look like that he was in a fat suit. And it became a bit distracting for me, because I sort of thought, look, if you're going to make him a lard lout now, why didn't you go the whole hog? Like, why didn't you do all of it? Why didn't you make him a couch potato? You know, not laughably so. I'm not saying that he should have been like, you know, John Travolta in a fat suit where he just like can't move type thing. But I don't know. It felt a little unnatural. I preferred.
But have you never heard of a beer belly, Max?
Obviously, but usually with a beer belly, you usually have like quite a lot of neck fat, and you know, he looked quite normal. He looked like that he was pregnant, as an opposed to fat, right? It didn't look that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I felt like the novelty was good, and I felt like it was a good idea, and I really liked the psychology behind it, of that he is in a rut, like big time, like he's really lost all sense of motivation and purpose, and he's filled with such levels of regret. But personally, I preferred the scenes that came later, when he was portrayed as being a bit more of a bumbling fool, and you could feel this like PTSD type deal rising to the surface. Like he was a nervous wreck, he was having panic attacks. Like that was much more interesting to me than haha, he's playing Fortnite all day and drinking booze. Like, sure, I'm not saying that shouldn't have been in there, because it was funny, it was good, and it really shattered our expectations. I was very ready for them to walk in that hut, and all that would be is that he's just sat in the corner, like silent, like and just like perpetually going over all of the mistakes that he made. But they didn't. They made it a bit more fun. They made it a bit more lighthearted while keeping it very rock solid. You know, I really appreciated when Professor Hulk, let's say, effectively put his hand on his shoulder and was like, "Hey, buddy, like, you're in a really rough spot, and you helped me out in a really bad time in my life, and I'm going to do the same for you." It was a real nice connection. I really appreciated it, because it meant that the previous films that we'd seen them in together, they meant something, you know? They do have this friendship that the Hulk or Bruce Banner appreciates, and he's sort of coming to Thor's aid almost to sort of say, well, you know, I'm here to help you out because you need help, even if he doesn't want it.
I think the other thing, though, is that Thor always goes through these sort of, well, recently has gone through a lot of transformations, and kind of has done throughout the MCU anyway, because Thor, the Dark World Thor, is a different Thor to Avengers Thor.
Oh, God, yeah.
And then you've got Thor Ragnarok Thor, and then you've got Infinity War Thor, and then you've got Endgame Thor. And that I tell you what, that does sort of annoy me slightly, because it just shows that this, despite the fact that, you know, basically there's just no consistency with his character. Like, who is Thor? Like, apart from being a prince of a super powerful thunder god.
Well, he's not even that now, is he?
No, exactly. That's what I mean. They've just kind of made him the comedic relief. The comic relief of the film, because everything else is so damn depressing that if he wasn't there, it wouldn't feel like the typical Marvel movie. Not that like that, and that obviously has ups and downs either way, because, you know, it was funny to see him like that, but it's also a testament to just how many people Thor has been tossed around to. I mean, if we're talking about Avengers 1 and 2 have one director, the 2 Thor movies have got 2 other directors, and then you've got Taika Waititi and the Russo brothers. You know, he's been handed off so many times that it's, like I say, it's hard to really nail down who Thor is anymore, because he's becoming more and more of just a malleable product instead of an actual character.
It's true, and I suppose there might have been some acknowledgement of that in the fact that Thor's character, from what we see, becomes a man of he doesn't know who he is. You know, Endgame, he is a mess. And so it's possible that they might have recognized exactly what you're saying and effectively said, well, if we don't know who Thor is, then perhaps he shouldn't know either.
But that's so dissatisfying.
Yeah, perhaps. And even by the end of the movie, I don't really feel like he came out of that rut completely. But keeping in spirit with sort of introducing new facets to characters, one of the biggest ones, which I want to know what you thought of, was Hulk.
I love that too. I literally thought that him being the hybrid of the two was perfect. And it was nice that, like, that has been the whole conflict all the way through for Hulk, is his inability to, or just having two separate states of mind. He is essentially a schizophrenic individual, if for lack of a better word. And now that he is sort of come to terms with the advantages of both sides. Do remind me, though, what was the exact reason that he became that way?
What became Professor Hulk?
Was it just the time going, the 5 years going by?
He explains it away as him and Hulk were going through some stuff, and he worked it out with him effectively in that 5 years. I suppose in that 5 years of relative peace, he had time to really come to terms with it. And he sort of said he always looked to Hulk as something to get rid of, where he changed his perspective and said, no, he's a part of me. I'm going to work with him. And
the dialogue was, now that you mention it, it was definitely interesting, but it did feel like a bit of a cop-out, because it's like, there's nothing actually happened apart from the quote-unquote peace that Thanos had set in to justify why he had become that way. But don't get me wrong, though. I'd like that that he is this way for, like, what I would like to believe is the final Marvel movie. It's like everything is having knots tied now that it has come to the end of the 10-11 year project, but at the same time I wish that they hadn't have just sort of mouthed it away as simply as that.
I agree. I'm in between a rock and a hard place, or like you can't have your cake and eat it scenario of I did like Professor Hulk, but at the same time I really wasn't sure it was the right thing to do, because I felt like we sort of got cheated out of Hulk. I mean, if you think, based on the events that have happened, the last time that we got to see Hulk was when he fought Thanos at the beginning of Infinity War. That is the last on-screen showing of true Hulk, right? Yeah. And, in movies, characters have character arcs. And I don't feel like Hulk got his character arc, because this Professor Hulk, that's Bruce Banner. It's not really the Hulk. And even though Bruce explains it as, I always looked at it as Hulk was something to get rid of, I sort of was befuddled, because he has gotten rid of Hulk. Hulk isn't there anymore. He even says, like, he can't, like, rage anymore. Like, he's a really happy guy. He's really, like, doing well. So tell me, except from the muscular green part, what part of Hulk is with him? I don't think there really is one. And I sort of felt like it was a shame, because I was hoping that we would get some retribution for Hulk. I mean, his whole character is that he is the strongest. He always has been, always will be. And he got absolutely dominated by Thanos in the beginning of Infinity War, but there's no... usually that's the low part of a hero's arc. We then would have the rise and the climax. He doesn't get it. He's robbed of it. And I do get the feeling that the reason why is exactly what you said, in that they wanted to have these tie-ups. They wanted to neaten it off in a nice ribbon. And in their mind, they thought, well, there's no better excuse for this happening than a 5-year downtime period. If they had made it happen in Endgame, it probably wouldn't have felt the same. And I'm glad they didn't do it that way, because I kind of liked that the first scene that we see him, he's eating mountains of food to keep his caloric intake, and we're then just explained away. And he says it so casually. He's like, yeah, no, we worked it out. And he's like this big, happy, lovable guy who's like getting selfies with people because he's living the high life now. He's like the best he's ever been.
He's now become Shazam.
I mean, I never saw that movie, but
no, honestly, you weren't missing out on particularly too much.
That's what I was imagining.
But yeah, we won't dive off onto that.
So yeah, I feel like it was good and bad. I felt like if they hadn't had it, they would have had a lot more opportunities to develop Bruce and Hulk as characters. But the fact that they did have this Professor Hulk, I felt was interesting. It was a new route for him, and it was entertaining. And there definitely wasn't anything bad about it. It was just there are a lot of missed opportunities, I suppose. Because now it's like, well, are they going to backtrack? You know, I'm sort of thinking of the future of Marvel. Are we going to get Hulk regress and he become his primal mode again? Like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, this feels like a completion of the Hulk story. In a way, it felt like Hulk should have been done, this movie, you know?
Just to put one little caveat to this, I was wondering when he was all chirpy and chippy, when he was all chirpy and happy that he had become the Professor Hulk, I kept wondering to myself, has nothing happened with his what's his not girlfriend, in the Incredible Hulk,
Betty.
Betty. This can either be on the record or off the record, but what, did she die?
I don't know, but I think that ship has sailed for a long time on the basis of...
That's exactly it. They shouldn't have, like, honestly, just one comment to tie it up and say, yeah, I got married in 5 years, and here's little green kid called Sam. Something absurd like that.
I feel like we got that though when in Age of Ultron and stuff. He's flirting with Black Widow. I think that is the symbol of that ship has sailed with Betty. I don't think that was ever going anywhere anymore, especially on the basis that the General absolutely hated his guts type thing. And then in that 5 years, nothing happened between him and Black Widow, really. Nothing is ever said that happened. And yet he's still like really chipper and happy. And I think he's just sort of happy with himself now. He's come to terms with that it is him and Hulk together, and they are inseparable. And he's just a big lovable lug now, He's like Sully from Monsters, Inc. He's scary, but he's a good guy. He's a nice man. And I think
I was just trying to think though. There was something just came through my head, and it was relating to the Hulk, and that was it. So the 5-year gap thing, I genuinely wasn't expecting. I thought that the movie was going to be a big unraveling of what Thanos had done, because when they obviously right at the beginning they go off and try and find him, but instead it takes them 5 whole years to figure out how to undo the mess, and I honestly thought that Endgame was just going to be one long sequence of chasing Thanos through the universe to try and undo the work that he had done. But
the break was nice.
Yeah, it was nice that it broke itself up.
I liked
nicely.
all the little things, like the fact that we got to see those giant memorials to all the people who had vanished and stuff like that. Like, it was very dystopian future. Like, you know, these national parks have now been turned into giant memorial statues, and, you know, we see when, like, Ant-Man is walking down the street, like, no one's taken out the garbage. Like, there's, like, wrecked cars and stuff like that, and
he just sees one kid, and it's not even like the kid says hello or anything.
No, he's fucking
he just
miserable.
Bikes away. It's like get the fuck away from me, kind of thing.
Yeah, he's fucking miserable, and I liked that it was a 5-year gap also, because I would have been a little bit. It would have been nitpicking, which is obviously isn't great, but I wouldn't have liked it if Ant-Man just so happened to have come back 48 hours after the snap happened. You know, It was like 5 years is a long enough time that a coincidence like the goddamn rat turning on the machine could have happened.
And it works as well because I mean, from the point of view of the filmmakers, they don't have to worry about any of the actors looking too old. Like, if they'd had a 10-year gap, they would have had to have put more effort into making everyone look very old. And
to be fair, Robert is getting grey, you know, Scarlett Johansson is, you know, getting on a bit. You know, that 5-year gap probably helped them catch up from the events of Avengers to now. That 5-year gap was what they needed to explain why everyone does look older now, you know. Robert Downey is going grey, so, you know, 5-year gap, right? You can let your grey out now, you know. It's even Mark Ruffalo is going grey, you know.
Yeah, we even managed to get the name of the podcast in here somehow.
Hey,
you said catching up gets all the characters to. So
you know, gotta plug it.
I would have interrupted you earlier, but you sounded like you were having a good time, so I let it linger for too long, I think.
That's fine. I suppose before we move on to Act 2, because we're dangerously getting close to it, there is one other person, Captain Marvel. Thoughts on her in the opening scenes?
I think I'm just going to echo the same thing that basically everyone else has said. She just didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
It was rather unnecessary.
She was a means to an end to get that spaceship back to Earth, and then
she is more a plot device than an actual character, which is irritating.
It's such a shame. I mean,
what was his name? Mike from Red Letter Media even said that she would make a great bad guy, like to top off Thanos. And then have Superman as the bad guy, essentially. That might make for an interesting story in itself. But I'm sure that they have to promote what would you call it? Or just making sure that Captain Marvel wasn't a complete waste of time.
I mean, I know why she wasn't in the movie, because she was busy filming her own movie at the time. You know, Captain Marvel came out like a month before Endgame. So the reason why she's not in the movie is because they literally didn't have the time to do it. She was filming them, you know, back to back effectively, which I felt was a shame, because it doesn't make much sense why she's not there. I mean, I know she gives the excuse of, you know, there's all these other worlds that I've got to look after, but I think the fate of half of the universe is a bit more important, and she would have done brilliantly in the whole time heist section of the movie, because she's obviously super powerful and probably could have wrapped up
super fast.
Exactly, right? She had it all. And yeah, I mean, I appreciated that she was in the movie at the beginning, because I know going throughout the rest of the movie, I was sat there thinking, well, is she not coming back? Is this it? Is that all we got of her? I mean, she does finally come back, but those opening sequences where she's just sort of hanging around, not really doing much. I mean, I know a lot of characters are just standing there hanging around, but she's like the spotlight right now. We've just had Captain Marvel, and I think everyone was expecting her to have a much bigger role. And I think all eyes were on her I know I did. I think they said it in Half in the Bag. They used the example of Doctor Strange, of saying that Doctor Strange wasn't so hot in his solo movie, but in Infinity War he really came out of his shell. And for me, I absolutely love Doctor Strange in Infinity War, and I think a lot of people were hoping that for Captain Marvel. I mean, I think Captain Marvel was a fine movie, but I think a lot of people were hoping that she was really going to come out of her shell in Endgame, but unfortunately, just through time constraints, she wasn't able to do that. And
it definitely does seem like a time issue.
Yeah, like a real world time issue, not a in-universe time issue, which is a shame, because I know a lot of people do like her. I know a lot of people don't like her as well, but
at the same time, there is going to be a huge portion of the public that went and saw Captain Marvel and thought, finally, a female superhero in the Marvel sort of canon. Because then, not even in a sort of sadistic way, but like genuine people would have been... I think that they would have been pleasantly surprised to find that they were going to make a movie for her, but then because it seems more like she would have served a greater purpose just because they had left her for so long, until like her first appearance. Like maybe if they made her movie earlier on in the schedule, then it might not have been so bad. But of course the problem also comes with the fact that she is just so fucking powerful.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell can you do with a character like that? Because we also know how... I mean, I haven't seen any of the DC movies of late. Like, I've just not bothered. But when you think about how badly the critical reception for
Justice League.
What's their Justice League? Yeah, that was the DC equivalent of the Avengers, and that flopped, if I remember correctly, critically, probably because the characters are just so absurdly powerful. Like no one cares. There's no stakes. I mean, this kind of rings true for Game of Thrones as well. But all of the main characters end up being, like, especially if you throw someone like Captain Marvel into the mix, it's suddenly like, well, of course she wasn't in the first movie. Of course, what was the other of course Ant-Man wasn't in the first movie, just because otherwise they would have won. You know, it all seems so contrived and planned that it's hard to have any emotional stakes in these characters at all. So on the one hand, I am happy that she has barely any influence, but even when she showed up on screen, I just thought, right, there she is, another one.
Her presence was there. That was all.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most character development she got was a haircut.
Yeah. Didn't they make a comment out of that of Rocket?
Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
But
Rocket made that comment.
Otherwise, I was very, very satisfied with the opening sequences. I thought they did a really good job of setting the tone. Mm-hmm. They made us feel sad, and they really put us on the same level as all the heroes. And, obviously we haven't even talked about Tony, but, I felt like Tony was perfect. Actually, no, there is one thing I want to talk about, and it does segue into Act 2. My absolute favorite scene in this whole movie happens when they bring Iron Man, Tony Stark, in from his ship, and he has that massive rant at Captain America. I absolutely adored it.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was brilliant.
That was a really good scene. Yeah,
because
I remember it very vividly now that you mention it.
I mean, half of it was narcissistic bias because I was always Team Iron Man for the whole Civil War dispute, and this punches Cap straight in the face of saying, "Yeah, you were an idiot. You were wrong, and this is what has happened because of that." And when he spelt it out black and white, I loved the fact that he said there should have been a suit of armor across the world. And you said, what did you say, Cap? You said if we lose, we'll lose together. Well, we have. and this is what it looks like. So therefore, I'm done. See you later. You're not getting any help from me whatsoever. Take this, and I'm gone. That's it. Tony Stark, Iron Man is over.
I think the best part about that all, though, is that every single person in the audience knows exactly what's going to happen, and they'll get back together. They always have their little spats.
But to be fair,
like, yeah,
it took 5 years.
That was the biggest one of all. Yeah.
You know, for a film goer, yeah, we see all of that happen in 3 years. But if we think from the perspective of the characters, Tony goes away and he takes a leaf out of Clint's book. You know, he gets his house, he has his happy memories, he gets his life. And 5 years go by where he sticks to his guns and he says, "No, Cap, you need to move for once in your life. You cannot be the center of everyone's world. I'm not going to help you." And Tony probably does his own thing and helps the world out, because obviously he's got a lot of influence and a lot of power. But he doesn't help the Avengers. He helps himself, Tony Stark, have a life with his wife and his daughter. And I thought that was a perfect summation. And that is a perfect excuse of you reap what you sow. And as petty as it might be, Captain America was in my opinion wrong, and I felt like that I was really glad that the writers took the time to have those jabs. As petty as some people might think that they were, I was so glad that Tony Stark got his time in the spotlight to tell Captain America how all of this that has happened is because of him and could have been much betterly prevented, given the events that were prevented in Civil War because of Cap's actions. And I loved it.
Much betterly prevented.
Yep, that is.
I like that.
That is my my excellent English skills being put to the test.
Am I right in thinking the Russo brothers also did Civil War?
Yeah, they did.
Well, there we go.
I mean, that's the reason why they tied it all in, because they knew it was coming. I'm pretty sure it was them, because they did Winter Soldier as well.
Yeah.
Which all sort of ties in nicely together. But so yeah, all in all, I was very satisfied with the low action, sort of melancholy first act. I thought it was well done in all of its summation.
Going into it definitely had me the most like hyped. The first bits shine a lot. And it's interesting because now that you've kind of framed it as being in 3 parts, like I honestly think that the sort of more negative parts of the movie do come in the second and third acts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll jump into those. Okay, so Act 2, Ant-Man comes out of the giant space arsehole. And is
from
now
Master Splinter,
yeah, and is now here 5 years later after the fact.
What do you think to that time? What do you think to that time break? 5 years specifically. Did you think Did you think it was perfect? Too long? Too short? I know we sort of talked about, it sort of caught up with the whole age thing, but I mean, I know that it took me by surprise when it came up. I mean, to be honest, I don't know why they did such a slow reveal, because they do like the number 5 appears and then there's a pause and then years appears. But I feel like as soon as it said, or as soon as it showed the number 5, I immediately knew it was going to be years. That was the shock to me when I said 5. I was like, oh shit.
It was a good shock though for me, because I don't know how well you'll remember this, if at all, but obviously people who have watched the channel are probably Doctor Who mad as I am. There's a bit in the Chris Eccleston series that is...
Oh, here we go.
Right before... No, Kat, hear me out. Just before, in the Bad Wolf episode, it gives like a flashback to one of the previous episodes, and then it says 100 years later, And I had that exact same kind of, oh, we are really going far now. Like there's a huge span of time that is just going to have to be taken into account for the whole story. And I really liked it just because, I mean, we did already kind of talk about the characters that get transformed over that time previously. But I think it was a good enough amount of time so that it wasn't too much so that all of the actors looked too old, like they didn't have to put loads of makeup on them or anything, but at the same time it almost matched the actors and actresses' real life ages as well. Like I'm sure we said before, like catching up, it really works like that amount of time.
But 5 years is long enough where we can feel like that there's some permanence to all the actions that occurred.
Yeah,
you know, it wasn't 5 minutes. It wasn't even, you know, even if they said 5 months, then I would have felt like, oh, you know, it's half a year, right? It's not that bad. But 5 years, I mean, me and you, Harry, we're young men, and 5 years to us is, I mean, that's like nearly a quarter of our lifespans. You know, that's quite a long time. That's it. So to me, like 5 years was like, oh man, that's quite bad. I mean, I know probably some people watching it who might be older than us, they might have thought, you know, 5 years type thing. But it sort of had an impact on me because I was like, oh my God, imagine having to live in this world for 5 years. That really would set in the melancholy of, yeah, no, this is real. This is all real. It's not just a dream.
Some serious, deep-seated emotions sort of held back by a lot of people because of just the sheer loss of life that transpired.
That's it. But thankfully, Master Splinter, the rat, saves Ant-Man by turning on the van, if you remember.
Yeah.
That's how he gets out. I've seen some good jokes about that. You know, that Doctor Strange said there's only 1 in 15 million timelines or something where they win. And I've seen a lot of jokes where it's like, well, 10 million of those timelines at least is just where that rat didn't turn on that machine to save Ant-Man. Like that's like such a huge variable that just shouldn't have happened. And then, but equally, it's like it's kind of funny and kind of like, haha, a rat just like turns on this machine. Isn't that a coincidence? But then you can't really complain because that's exactly what Doctor Strange is planning for, these like mad coincidences which shouldn't really happen, but they do. And he pops out and it's kind of funny, isn't it? I mean, he's in that storage shed and he has to be let out by that security guy who for some reason doesn't report him to the authorities and just lets him go. But he has that then mad little walk through. Is it New York? Are they in New York? Is that where they are? Are they in New York?
Most of the time, we could probably reliably say yes. I honestly, I fair enough, man. I'm trying to remember this bit. Like I've out of the whole 3-hour fest, this bit that you're explaining to me right now, I'm honestly really struggling to remember it.
Well, how did you think he got out of the machine after 5 years?
I honestly can't remember like this particular bit. It's blank. Like I remember the bit with Thor cutting off the head, and then after that, I remember thinking in my head or seeing Ant-Man going down the street and seeing that kid who gives him a sort of dirty look, and then he starts explaining all the quantum stuff. I'm trying to connect all the bits together now because this is like one segment that like. I honestly can't remember.
Somehow the van from Ant-Man and the Wasp with all the big quantum machinery in it, somehow that gets taken from that location and put into storage, and then a rat flicks the switch to the machine, which is how Scott, Ant-Man, gets out of the machine because the machine turns on and he gets flung out. And then he's stuck inside this warehouse and he holds up a sign to the security camera saying, like, let me out.
Oh, I remember it now. Oh, I remember the shot. I remember the shot.
And then he gets let out. And then it's literally from there, he's like pulling a like a little trailer, like a cookie trailer with him. And he's going down all the streets, basically saying, what the hell's going on? He sees the vanishing tabloid stone thingies.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then he finds he finds the Avengers, and he's like, "Hey, I've got this mad hat theory of time travel," and then we get into the time heist, and I mean, I think there is a lot of people on both sides of the fence of this. I mean, what side do you stand on for Act 2? This whole time heist thing. What did you make of it?
Well, I don't know where else the movie would have gone in sort of any kind of Avengers direction that you could have taken it, because I know that because we watched Infinity War together, I remember speculating about, well, maybe we were both speculating about the fact that Doctor Strange could just have used the time stone at any moment to just rewind and give it another shot, or just to change what had happened in the first place. But obviously that had some payoff later in Endgame anyway, when we go back to see Tilda Swinton's character.
Oh, which now we're here.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so, I don't know. I was in such awe that they, and not just her. They bring back so many people who they did like a double bait for me, because when we see the Jatari attacking the Sanctum Sanctorum, and you see like all the magic bouncing off all these plasma shots, and you see the camera sweeps behind her, and you see her silhouette, and you see like the fan come out to the side, and I was like, that's meant to be the Ancient One, but they couldn't get Tilda Swinton, so this is all we're gonna get. We're gonna get a silhouette. Yeah. But then they pan around, and oh my god, she's there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. And they did it again with Natalie Portman later on in Asgard.
Oh, yeah.
Like Rocket and Thor are there, and like he looks around a pillar or something, and you get this really, really long shot, and Thor goes, oh look, there she is, there's Jane. And I was like, oh, they're doing this because they couldn't get Natalie Portman back, so they've got a long shot, and then Thor telling us that it's Jane. But then in the very next scene, she's there, and we get a shot of her. And I was like, "What? That's quite impressive that they got her back as well. Not that I think that we needed her back, but the fact they bothered. They got Thor's mother back. You know, they didn't get Sir Anthony Hopkins back, Odin, but maybe he was busy.
Honestly, that whole bit with the Dark World, I probably could have slept through it.
For sure. Yeah.
I just having bad nightmares of that particular Thor film. And thinking, wow, okay, we're really going back here, are we? Of all the
places.
Such
a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? That movie is pivotal because it has the origins of the Reality Stone. That's the only reason we need that movie. Yeah. It's such a shame.
And they could have done so much with it as well, because I remember in Infinity War, they really utilised that fantastically with the Guardians of the Galaxy when they interact with Thanos. And some of the most crazy stuff happens to Gamora as well as a result of it. And yet we were plagued.
It was boring.
We were plagued by Thor: The Dark World.
And your favourite actor, Christopher Eccleston.
Oh. That was unfortunate. We don't talk about that.
It was unfortunate, wasn't it? It's not his fault. It's not his fault. I just find it funny because they say that, you know, he likes to be in things that he thinks are going to be good, and he chose that.
People gotta get paid. He probably got paid a shitload.
So who else? Like they also bothered with all the Hydra agents. Oh, like you've got all of Cap's friends, like Crossbones, the guy, the sort of bald, darker skinned man with the glasses. He was in it. They had the really old dude who was like in charge of SHIELD, but he was a Hydra agent. They got those guys back, and that was really impressive that they could get those cameos.
And the fact that it went like one step further with Cap being in the elevator again.
Right, yeah, right.
The same damn people. And it was like, I feel like I'm having deja vu right here. What is going on?
Which is quite good because obviously they're doing time travel, so which is exactly what you should feel. It's sort of like the Back to the Future 2, isn't it? Where they go back to where they were in the first movie, and they have to avoid their real selves again, and they have to act based on what their real selves were doing back then. I mean, that was an expectation subversion. I really thought that they were just going to do a complete mirror shot and Cap was going to fight them in the elevator again, this time him being the one instigating the fight instead of them. But I thought it was really clever what they actually did, and I thought it was quite funny, actually, that they sort of made him say Hail Hydra, because you do get these moments where you're like, oh my god, he could change history right now. You know, these are the guys, these are the Hydra guys, they could just stop them right now. But they can't, because as Hulk told them, you know, it's changing the past doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah,
that's how they establish.
And how they can get away with so many plot holes. Sorry.
Yeah, right. So that's worth talking about, isn't it? Like they very much spit in the face of a lot of movies, don't they? Back to the Future, Bill and Ted, all of these are mentioned, and Professor Hulk effectively says, "Now they're all wrong." And I really liked that War Machine very specifically was like, hey, why don't we just go back in time and kill Thanos as a baby? Because you know that's what the internet would be saying.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, doesn't work like that. These are the new set of rules. This is what is going to work. All your other things that you think will work don't work. And for the most part, they do well, except from at the end. But we can get to that in the third act, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're right when you say I don't really know what else they could have done except from doing some time stone shenanigans.
Yeah.
I think the only problem I have with it is that the time stone is meant to be this like supernaturally powerful magical item from the dawn of the universe. So it's kind of like a MacGuffin, like the One Ring. Yeah. It's like it's allowed to be this powerful. And now characters can just do it, apparently. Like, they don't need a time stone anymore. Like, I get it. Like, the time stone does other things. And it probably does those things safer. But it kind of felt like it was a bit... I would have preferred if they had to use the time stone, you know? Because they already put that in. It'd be like if we got another movie where... They could replicate the powers of the Reality Stone. So, well, then what's the point in having a Reality Stone if you can just do it with technology, right?
I think they might have had to deviate slightly from using the Time Stone just because they killed off Doctor Strange in Infinity War.
What, and they don't want anyone else to be able to use it because it's like his trademark or something?
Yeah, it would probably... I mean, like we were talking before we got started about the people going and watching this movie and have not watched any of the other Marvel movies, you know, their detriment. And that is probably a result, or like, what would you call it? Like putting them in there so that those specific audience members don't get caught up thinking that it's another, like it's associated to something else. Like, I think that if they have Benedict Cumberbatch there to sort of just be the image of the Time Stone, because obviously for any layman who hasn't watched these movies or hasn't, you know, paid enough attention, you know, all of the stones have got their own names, they've got their own origins and all the rest. And all of them are laid out in these movies, which is why it's insane to think that there are people that are going and watching Endgame and have not watched any of the other Marvel movies.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward. I can't imagine what I would... imagine, like we're now talking about this, and hopefully the people listening to this are also fans and they'll appreciate what we're talking about. But imagine if, we were having this conversation, but one of us hadn't seen any of the other Marvel movies. The conversation would just be so short.
Yeah.
Because there's not... I mean, what can you do apart from say, yeah, it was good, yeah, it was bad? The reason why this is such an ultimate mountain peak, if you will, is the fact that it had all of this bedrock underneath it. A mountain's peak is only the peak because of everything it stands on. And this movie stands on top of 10 years of Marvel movies. The whole reason why the time heist works in the first place is because it's being shown to a fan base and an audience who are engaged enough to understand that when they go back to New York, that's the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And we get the jokes, we get what's going on. You know, when they're standing there and they've just defeated Loki, and then we sort of get like the behind the scenes moment of Tony going, "Hey, we can stand heroically all day. Let's get this Joker out of here." And then they all go down in the elevator. It's like, you don't expect that. You expect them all to fly off and do something, you know, cool and heroic. But no, they all just get in the elevator and Hulk has to take the stairs. You know,
Yeah.
It's crazy, because that is exactly like, if this was a real world, this would be like the behind the scenes of the real world. You would never see that part. So that's kind of like an in joke for all the fans that have watched all the movies. But that really should be everyone.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you know, the one thing that bugged me about the whole thing though was how, how would you call it? The heist element of it was really overused. Like, the music, for example, is just so obviously inspired by any other heist movie that you've seen before. The sort of Mission Impossible kind of melodies that just played throughout it. And to their credit, it's obviously, it would work if it was shorter, only because this is a 3-hour movie, and for me 3D, a 3-hour movie. The music felt so kind of stretched thin by the end of it. I don't know if you picked up on that at all, but I honestly
didn't pick up on the music, no, but it's interesting what your brain picks up on, because I felt like that it was either too short or too long. I felt like it was in the middle. I think if they made the whole thing shorter and sort of made it some, like, I don't want to say quick cuts, because that's too short, but they should have made it like a rolling heist. Each scene should have bled into the next scene without and like making it quite snappy. You know, like I don't know, like the Italian Job or something like that. You know, it should have just been like this rolling heist which kept going and going and going, and only lasted maybe, I don't know, half the amount of time. But instead we got all these extra bits with 2014 Thanos capturing Nebula, with Stark and Captain America having to go back in time again to go to that 1970s base and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like that sort of bloated it a little bit. But then equally, I would have liked it if, instead of being however long it was maybe an extra third longer, and that they had taken the time to do like a proper bank heist talk, like in Baby Driver or Italian Job. You always get that bit at the beginning where it's like, right, so you're gonna go in here and do this and that, and they sort of did that, but they didn't do it enough, in my opinion. Like, they got Thor to get up and talk about the Reality Stone and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think I just had some lust for wanting to see like some blueprints, and you know, like how they did it in Ant-Man. They very much laid out what was going on, how it was going to happen, and then, like you said, the heist music starts playing, and you get those like quick cuts, or like, I don't know, it would have been cool to see some like training montages of them like practicing. I don't know how they would do it, but I mean, I'm not a film director, so that's not my job to. But yeah. I don't know. I felt like it was too short or it was too long. I felt like the amount of time they did it for was a little bit like a bit too in the middle. It looked like they were trying to make it longer, and then they didn't.
Well,
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry. You go.
I was going to say that I think what made it more. So I think I would kind of disagree with you on the fact that it would, like, if they had training montages and stuff, it would seem kind of pointless, because you would think that all of these would have come as a result of their adventure up until this point. Like, I think I'm fine with them just sort of jumping into the deep end, essentially, because I mean, they've only just essentially discovered time travel. They are kind of in new territory either way, so the sort of improvisational tone of it is where I think a lot of the comedy is drawn from, which I think is to that segment's merit more than anything else.
Okay, sure, fine, yeah. I mean, I can't grumble too much. I mean, I really liked the scenes when they went back to the 1970s and Stark got to talk to his dad.
Yeah,
and we sort of saw that scene of Cap staring at Carter, Agent Carter, and yeah, I don't know. Even in that moment, I don't know. It was tugging at my heartstrings a little bit because I saw him staring at her, and I was just like thinking, "You can't talk to her, mate. Like you can't." But you know that he wants to. You know that he's a man out of time and stuff like that. And just quickly, I don't know about you, but I mean, I don't really like things growing on me too much because that gets in the way. But I liked Captain America in this movie a lot more than I've ever liked him before. I think he did really, really well in this movie.
I think, yeah, like emotionally, I think I will agree with you there. I think that the that particular scene that you mentioned with Agent Carter being sort of blissfully ignorant of him
separated by the glass.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
He can see but can't touch.
That really put, like, you to take your words and put them into mine. It's like, yeah, pulling on the heartstrings. I did like that bit.
And then it's paralleled with Tony Stark being in the basement, and he's got this awkward confrontation with his dad because it's like he has the opportunity to talk to him, and at the beginning he avoids it as if like he feels like that this is bad. You know how like it again, like in Back to the Future 2 when Doc is talking to Doc.
Oh yeah,
and the new Doc, he's like hiding his face and like making sure that the old Doc doesn't see who it really is, and he's like, he indulges in it a little bit, but he knows that it's wrong, and so he tries to get away with it, go away quickly. Stark starts off that way, like he hides his face. He's like, oh, I need to get some air. I need to take my suitcase and go. And then Howard, his father, is like, oh, I'll come with you. The exit's this way, and then he sort of relaxes a bit, and he then enjoys it, and he gets to know his father in a way that he never did. And those two moments for Cap and Tony were really quite special, and sort of they make the time travel worth it to have those moments. Even if we had problems with the whole time heist scenario, those two moments were really great, I thought.
Well, especially considering their final outcomes as well in the movie.
Of course,
I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, this is a spoiler discussion anyway, but they die, haha.
What? I didn't see that part.
Really?
No, I'm obviously joking.
Really? No, yeah,
Yes.
I think that they, the time travel part of it. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
The only thing I do have a problem with is the Power Stone part of the heist. For some reason, Nebula waits until they're there to tell people that Thanos, her, and Gamora are looking for the Power Stone.
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't she mention that earlier? Why did they send War Machine?
Well, Nebula is at the root cause of a lot of issues, I think, in this movie, with her just not having enough time to explain anything, or whether or not it's like deliberate that she was misleading just based on how chaotic her character appeared to be at times in the Guardians movies. But at the same time, like her not that example you gave just sort of is one example of her being
I imagine if they had said, or she had said, hey, when we go get this Power Stone, by the way, like literally me, Gamora are looking for the Power Stone at the exact same time, and Thanos knows that Infinity Stones are a thing, I'm pretty sure Iron Man or Captain America would have been like, okay, we're going to go there then instead. Like, you guys have got New York handled. We'll go and help out War Machine. Because I know War Machine is probably quite powerful, because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's an Iron Man suit. It doesn't really matter that he's not Tony Stark. But he's still War Machine, He's not that great.
To the Avengers all the same, yeah.
Right, exactly. And to be fair, actually, to them, they do actually succeed, don't they? I mean, they do get the Power Stone, and Rhodey goes back, and then for some reason Nebula doesn't return. I don't really understand why she didn't just teleport back into the machine. She decides to stay.
Well, with the 5-year gap, the age of War Machine, the actor who plays him, it makes a lot more sense now, because I think that in some of the later movies that he's in, it seems like he kind of acts older than his character probably is. But like now, I just remember in the scene with I think it was like 4 or 5 of them, like holograms for the I can't remember the scene. I remember, yeah, they're in front of.
It's near the beginning.
In front of Black Widow, aren't they?
Yeah.
That bit was when I thought, okay, now he actually looks as old as he probably like the actor would be. Yeah. So yeah, Nebula was a little bit of a strange anomaly. What did you think about the second iteration of the Soul Stone sacrifice with Black Widow and Hawkeye? I suppose that's something big that we need to talk about. Yeah, I'm on the fence about it. I really kind of, on the one hand, feel their emotions in this scene. Like obviously neither one of them wants they both want to do it themselves, but at the same time they want to prevent the other one from going down as well, and it kind of creates this really nice awkward tension between them. But at the same time, it just feels kind of like, are they seriously not? Well, on the one hand, this again another instance of Nebula not explaining anything to them, that they might have to get a decoy or something.
I will put my foot in the door for that one. And I know a lot of people on the internet will disagree. I do not think that Nebula knew what was going to happen at the Soul Stone.
Okay.
A lot of people do say, oh, why didn't Nebula tell them that they had to sacrifice each other? I don't think she knew, because all she says in Infinity War is Thanos left with Gamora to Vormir, and he came back with the Soul Stone. That doesn't mean anything. She doesn't know that means it was a sacrifice. I mean, Gamora is a person who has countless times betrayed, backstabbed, and outrightly tried to kill Thanos. Why wouldn't she just assume that once Gamora had told him where the Soul Stone was and showed him on Vormir, that he just killed her because she's a traitorous daughter and that he doesn't want her anymore? And yes, I know an answer to that would be, oh, well, he wouldn't have done that because he loved her, but no one knew that. Even Gamora was sickeningly surprised when he says it, and she's like, this isn't love. So there's no way that Nebula would have truly believed that Thanos loved Gamora enough to not kill her for her treason. So I just think that what Nebula meant is that he went to Vormir with her, got the Soul Stone, and then he killed her because he doesn't need her anymore, and she's constantly getting in his way and being an asshole to his plans. So he kills her and comes back with the Soul Stone, and that's it.
It was
right.
Do you know, that was quite a retort of honestly, I hadn't thought about it that much. I just remember thinking that when I watched it, but
there was someone who used an analogy. I'm really sorry that I don't have the credit for who said this. It was in a YouTube video. Someone said, if you knew the location of some hidden buried treasure, right, and you had to take this girl with you because she knew the location of the treasure, right, and you and her go into this treasure, and then you came back with the treasure but without the girl, who is going to stand there and say, oh, well, you must have obviously needed to sacrifice that girl's blood to some ancient door in order to reveal the treasure and get it? No, you would have assumed she just died on the adventure. That's such a leap to say that she had to die to get the treasure. No, she got squished by a boulder or something. That's way more likely. There's a term we use in philosophy called Occam's razor, and it's this is it. You know, that's such a stretch to say, oh well, he must have needed to sacrifice her for the Soul Stone. What, just because it's got the name Soul in it? Like, you've never had to pay that kind of a toll for any of the other Mind Stones. I don't remember someone having to sacrifice their mind to get the Mind Stone. I don't remember someone sacrificing time and turning into an old man to get the Time Stone. No, this is an anomaly. Like, no one would know that.
Okay, I think we're getting a bit bogged down on the rebuttal here, because like.
But the point being is that I don't think that's a fair nitpick.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, like I say, it was just something that came across my mind. Like, I didn't sort of immediately. It didn't ruin anything in particular because I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. Like, it only came into mind like kind of afterwards.
I'm sure people in the comments section will still have problems with what I've just said, but but yeah, no, I kind of agree with you anyway that the Soul Stone scene felt a little bit inorganic, a little bit. I felt I didn't feel like it was great. It was fine. I didn't expect Black Widow to die, I suppose. I did think that it was going to be Hawkeye, and when he jumped off the edge, I felt like that was it.
I thought it was going to be it as well.
I did get baited when she then saves him. I wasn't expecting that. However, I will say quickly, I found it very funny. I think it was the Half in the Bag review where they said something to the notion of didn't Red Skull say you have to sacrifice a soul, not just watch your friend run off the edge? They said like it would have been so satisfying if Hawkeye had ran off the edge, jumped, died, and then Red Skull was like, well, you didn't sacrifice him, so you just watched him run off the edge. That doesn't count.
No voluntary action was detected.
Exactly, right? Exactly. But I mean, it was fine though, right? There was nothing egregious.
It had to do what it needed to do.
Yeah,
it did.
And also, I think they subverted some people's expectations because there's obviously talks of I don't know if you know this. There's talks of a Black Widow solo movie, and so I had it in my head. I was like, well, just like Spider-Man, because he's getting a movie in a couple of months. There's no way that they can kill off Black Widow, but obviously, I then found out later that this movie's probably going to be a prequel. It's going to be like a set in the 90s or something. So that's how they're getting around it.
Are they getting another actress in?
No. I think it's still going to be Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, see, I thought, you know, in the credits when you see all of their signatures on the screen, I thought that was Disney I thought that was Disney just saying like, that's the end of their contracts, folks. You better say goodbye to them now.
Well, Chris Evans is still in there.
Ah.
And he had his signature. The signatures were just for the original Avengers.
Oh, I know. I knew that.
Okay.
I totally didn't forget or failed to realise.
So, I mean, so the second act, I feel like it was a means to an end, wasn't it? It wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't devastating.
It gets spicy.
Them to the third act.
Yeah, it was original enough to kind of have. Well, I say original. I mean, a lot of the time travel cues have been done before, but by the same token, like every time travel thing has stolen from something previously, right. I'm sure. And it's almost like every cliche is going to be a cliche at this point, whether they, like some of them will get subverted, some won't. But the fact that they, like we said earlier, have just kind of said to any kind of rules, they've just said, no, everything is going to stay the same. Everyone is just going to come back the way that you want it. This is the result that everyone is going to like, and this is the one track mind of getting there.
And then in a similar vein, I really appreciated when they had that secondary talk with Tilda Swinton, at the Ancient One, and she very, very plainly lays out and says, if you take our Infinity Stones, you're going to shatter this timeline and make an alternate reality. And so then they once again very plainly explain, or Hulk very plainly explains to her, okay, in that case, we'll make sure to bring the stones back. How's that? And then it's like, okay, so now we have the rules for the time travel. We now have rules for like alternate reality, and we have rules for how it's all going to be fixed. That's cool.
Yes.
I think. But to be honest, I just liked that she was in the movie.
No, I really like that she was there. I think that she was one of the things that kind of held up Doctor Strange, if anything.
Oh, for sure.
Like one of the more positive parts that I think was very much appreciated in this movie.
And also you get that nitpick where it's like people would have said when Doctor Strange came out, they would have been like, oh, well, if this Sanctum Sanctorum was in New York, why weren't they helping in the attack on New York? Well, this doesn't answer that question, but it does bring it to your face of saying, yeah, they were there. They were probably doing some stuff.
You won't ever know, though, because, like...
That's right.
That'll have to wait for Doctor Strange 2, where they go back in time again and live through the original Avengers movie.
Yeah, and they have to stop their Endgame cells from doing something because time travel.
Like, if they need an excuse to remake the first Avengers movie, that'll be how they do it.
Wow. Oh, wow. No, not remakes. Not already.
It's Disney owned. It's going to happen.
Oh, God. 20 years down the line, we'll get a new Iron Man.
Yeah, and it'll be played by Will Smith. He'll be a withered old man.
So... Act 3, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think that let's jump into the big battle.
Well, I think Act 3 starts when they get back from the time pad and they've got like the imposter nebula.
Oh shit, there. Yeah.
And
Jeremy Renner just steals the whole scene as well, doesn't he? Because it's like, oh, now Black Widow's gone.
That's right. Yeah, and they have that sort of moment where Hulk and Hawkeye and, well, I mean all of them really, they shed a tear type thing, and Hulk gets a little bit angry. But I really then liked the setup for them snapping the fingers. And again, I felt like they really plainly explained it. You know, they were sort of saying, Thor was like, oh, you have to let me do this. And obviously us as the audience and them as the characters are all sitting there going, hey man, you've like put on an extra 10 stone. You just can't. You're not in the shape to. But then they do go ahead and explain of like, look, this nearly killed Thanos. This ain't a walk in the park. Not just anyone can do that. And they established that rule early, which is obviously important for later with Tony doing the snap. And they get Hulk to do it. And it kind of wrecks him.
I was going to say that even though it's one size fits all glove, you've got to have a big fucking hand to snap the fingers.
That's right. It's kind of strange, actually, now you say that they sort of, they built the glove to make it look like someone like Tony or Thor would wield it. When I'm sure when Tony was making it, I mean, this wasn't something he did in 10 minutes. He must have spent quite a while making it. So Bruce must have had a chat with him saying, it's probably going to be me, right? So why didn't they just make the glove bigger? Like, naturally. I know that it grows and stuff, but it just seemed like extra half. You know?
Any excuse to throw more special effects in.
That's right, yeah. It was cool, though. I know some people have been like, well, why did Thanos need to get a specially made glove from Nidavellir, and why did Peter Dinklage have to build it for him when Iron Man can just do it? And I get it. Like, I understand, but what's the alternative? Would you prefer that they go back to Nidavellir and see Peter Dinklage again and have that scene again where they have to fire up the star and stuff like that? No, of course you don't. No. So can we just say that the guy who literally just discovered time travel can make an Infinity Gauntlet? I think that's fair, right?
Well, honestly, at this point, like, I'm so used to Iron Man's or Tony Stark's intelligence being able to create just about anything under the sun. I'm perfectly okay with him suddenly, like a mad scientist.
You can just do it
in the cliche manner. I'll bow my head a little to give it some leeway. I'm fine with it.
And I love how we've completely glossed over just how the movie pretty much glosses over the fact that Tony Stark just discovers time travel, right? Like he quotes, just works it out. Like that's literally what he says to Pepper Potts. He's like, "Oh, I worked it out." It's like, "Oh, did you now? Well done."
I would wonder if there was another excuse given if this was a comic. Like, I don't know if if there is some original material that this movie is based on.
It is, but I don't think there's anything to do with time travel. The Infinity War storyline does not end in this way at all. In terms of like time travel or anything like that.
Needs
to
more
that
Captain
extent.
Marvel.
I really don't know what Ant-Man is like in the comics. I don't know if he has that capability to travel through time and the quantum realm and stuff like that. I'm sure someone more learned in the ways of Marvel Comics can let us know. I'm quite interested to know if he has this power in the comics or if this is a new edition.
I've never read a Marvel comic.
Well, there you go. That's why you're missing out. There's
I
some
don't
good ones.
plan on doing it either.
I can respect that. I can.
Maybe Planet Hulk.
Oh, don't start on that one. That's that's so complicated and convoluted, and that's a pretty big one.
A big comic, like a George R. Martin comic.
Yeah, well, there's just so much going on in it. If anyone has never read a Marvel comic, my first one, and people might be like, "Oh, that's a new one. That's not like a good one to read." I don't know, but my first one was called The Road to Civil War, which is like a precursor to the Civil War comic, and it's really good. It sets up everything. It's nice and it's quite short. It's got all your characters in it, Doctor Strange and all that kind of stuff, and they explain.
And the Winter Soldier.
I don't know. I don't think he's in it.
Oh.
I don't think he was in it. Anyway, we're getting off track again, as we do. So yeah, they do the snap, and Bruce is like, quite wrecked, isn't he?
Mm.
I'm kind of surprised that Nebula waited until the snap happened for her to summon Thanos' ship. Seems quite convenient.
Well, if we're going to say that Nebula was not privy to the information of the acquirement of the Soul Stone, can we therefore say the same about this scene? Like with her...
2014 Nebula didn't know that they were trying to assemble this Infinity Gauntlet and that they were going to click.
She's probably seeing this for the first time in any form of capacity. Like, what if they had snapped the fingers and nothing had happened? Or, I think the realm of possibility kind of is so open that...
I think that's fair.
I got you rebutted that time, son.
No, I think that's very fair. I mean, for all we know, Thanos could have said to her, "Hey, if they click their fingers and nothing happens, then don't bother. They failed."
Yeah.
The fact that they succeed could be the reason why she even bothered.
She might have no idea what the original intention of snapping the fingers was anyway.
It's true. I mean, Gamora didn't know in 2014 because she asks, doesn't she? And Thanos is like, "Oh, destiny. That's my dream."
You will find out in 5 years, my child.
That's right. I am inevitable or whatever. There's a little bit of a nitpick of I don't really understand how Nebula is able to operate the time machine, but it's a means to an end, isn't it? We can't. If we were going to nitpick the whole movie, we would tear it apart, and it's not really fair.
Yeah,
it is a means to an end
because we enjoyed it just so much.
Yeah, right. And I think it's fair to say that. And I think a lot of people hopefully feel this way, is that the blemishes in this movie are only blemishes because the movie was so satisfying. You know, like all these things that we have to say that are bad about it, they only come to the surface because the rest of the movie was so stellar. You know, you think of it like a shiny royal crown. Well, if you get a little bit of muck on it, you're going to notice because the whole thing is so shiny that this little piece of muck is very obvious. But if the whole crown was a mucky, horrible mess, then you're not going to notice, are you?
Yeah.
So I think it's the fact this movie was so shiny that these tiny little blemishes that are on it are very noticeable.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, for another analogy, it's like shaking hands with 99 people and the 100th person slaps you in the face. You're going to remember that person more than the other people.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah.
Thanks. Can I have my philosophy major now, please?
No.
Oh, shit. Can I have my complimentary Occam's razor? That's
right. Yeah, you get that sent in the mail. You can expect that. You can expect that in an undefined amount of time. But yeah, they summon the ship and they blow up the Avengers compound. And I have to say that out of everything, that probably annoys me the most in the entire movie because no one is hurt, let alone killed. And I sort of felt like Thanos' ship blowing up that whole Avengers compound, like he rips it to shreds. It gets turned up, the water starts pouring in and stuff. I thought, oh, this is where they're going to kill off quite a few of the side characters then in just this massive explosion, because that makes sense. I mean, hell, someone, I think, what was it, Ant-Man? I think he was looking at the explosion when, like, he was looking out the window and he saw all these missiles coming. And he survives. And it was like, okay, fine. But what was the point in blowing it all up if there was no consequence to that? And I felt like that annoyed me a bit. But
I think that the main thing that got me about it was more of the deja vu thing, but only in the sense that it's not something that was sort of done intentionally for that purpose. So obviously this happens in Iron Man 3, doesn't it? That whole area gets blitzed as well. And the same thing has happened again, only it feels even more convenient that they survive.
Yeah, because there's more of them. And, you know, these guys, they're humans. You know, they're not superpowers.
No, they're not. They're superheroes.
I mean, I know we keep picking on him, but War Machine is just a disabled guy in a suit. You know, that's not. He's not like Captain Marvel. He's not invincible. He's a flawed person, which is great. It's a great character, but he should be dead. Like, he really should. But he's so lucky. He's so lucky.
His contract hadn't ended.
It's true. Yeah, you're right. he's now going to be the new something.
Well, no, I think his contract will never end. He didn't get a signature in the end credits.
That's right.
He'll just continue to be a menacing presence in the Iron Man movies to come that are recast.
They'll be called the War Machine movies now.
Oh yeah.
So they tear up the battlefild.
I have to say that I'm really happy that you're guiding us through this again, because some of the events like that of, you know, Thanos just blasting the coast again, I forgot about that entirely.
I know, I'm used to it by now. That's why I'm doing this. I'll be your Jeeves, your guided through this movie. So they rip up the battlefield. Thanos sits down and has a chill out, and he says to Nebula, "Go on, you go get me that gauntlet." And everyone starts to drown. And, you know, and in the moment, I'm like, oh, you know, this could be the moment. Ant-Man's running to try and save them. Again, I was really sad that Hulk sort of faltered in this area, because he was like holding up the rubble. That there's a really iconic comic book, which I'm forgetting the name of, where he holds up basically a mountain to save all the Avengers. Like, it's literally the same scene. that he's holding up
Okay.
this massive rock, and all the Avengers are like under him, and if he lets go, everyone is dead. And that's what I thought this scene was. I thought that was that scene where Hulk is now gonna like revert back, and he's gonna turn into like Rage Hulk again, and he's gonna lift up this massive compound, and then everyone's gonna get out. But no, Ant-Man saves the day, which is fine. I don't mind, but I just feel bad for Hulk at this point. He feels like he's being brushed off to the side, and he's an old man now. He's not a Rage Hulk. He's Green Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to call them now. The Incredible Bruce Banner.
The Incredible Green Bruce Banner.
That's it. It doesn't have the same ring to it. So they all get out, and you get our 3 heroes. You get Cap, Thor, and Iron Man. They're just standing there staring at Thanos, and they're like, "What's he doing?" And he's like, "Nothing. He's just sitting there." It's all right.
Yeah.
Let's go fight him. And they have a big fight, and it's all cool. And
Apart from the fact that, I don't. Maybe I've already mentioned this. Do stop me in my tracks if I have. But how come Infinity War Thanos, with not all of the stones, can basically swat these guys off no problem and do exactly the same thing 4 years before without any knowledge of their existence at all, and without any Infinity Stones to help him out? How come he's still so... How come he's good? Give me an answer to that one. I want to hear.
I am rubbing my hands together and smiling gleefully.
Please,
I'm so glad you brought this up. Obviously I've seen quite a few people have looked into this, and I think, firstly, he does know about them. 2014 Thanos has knowledge on the Avengers, because he's told about them at the end of the Avengers. The man goes up to him and says, "Oh, to the Earth, they defeated us, and to court them is to court death." And so, and then even Infinity War, Tony says to him, "You know me?" And Thanos is like, "Yeah, I know who you are. Like, you're Tony Stark. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge." And so it's like he knows them. Like, don't kid yourself. This isn't his first rodeo into looking into what they do. Secondly, this might be. I don't want to make it too long-winded, but so I have this lovely image of Thanos in Infinity War at the beginning when he is fighting Hulk. He's in all of his armor. And then when he's beaten him, and Ebony Maw, the telekinetic guy, he kneels down in front of Thanos with the Tesseract, and he says to him, "Your humble personage, no one has ever had the will, nay the might, to wield not one, but 2 Infinity Stones." And during this entire speech, Thanos is taking off his armor, and he takes the Tesseract, crushes it, takes the Space Stone, and puts it in his gauntlet. And for the rest of the movie, I don't think we see a warrior anymore. We see a zealot. We see a pilgrim. We see a monk. He has donned, or rather he has doffed his armor. He has taken it off. He is no longer the Thanos of war. He is now Thanos with a purpose. Thanos with a peace goal. He is now a monk. He is
Thanos the Worthy.
Exactly. And he's going around the galaxy finding these stones not to kill anyone, but to make the universe balanced. You notice in all of the fights in Infinity War, he never tries to kill anyone. When he gets the Reality Stone, he blasts Drax and Mantis with the Reality Stone because it doesn't kill them. He could have blasted them with a Power Stone and ripped them apart. So that's Thanos. That's like Pilgrim Thanos. Just remember him. 2014 Thanos, the one that we see in Endgame, that to me is Warrior Thanos. That is, I don't care about this goal right now because I don't have this Infinity Gauntlet. I don't have 2 Infinity Stones that marks the start of this great religious sort of journey, if you will, this miracle journey. He's just a very, very powerful warrior, and I do believe that if a Thanos can beat up the Hulk one-on-one. I know people, they like to argue about whether he was using the Power Stone in that moment or not, but regardless, if he's able to go toe-to-toe with the Hulk in that moment, I sure as hell can believe that with his weapon and with the nobility to be okay with killing the Avengers, I believe that he can do it. I mean, sure, when he's on Titan with 4 Infinity Stones, he's fighting like, what, 6 of them? But you got to remember, all he's got is his fists and this Infinity Gauntlet with these new stones, which he doesn't quite fully grasp yet. You know, he's not omnipotent, but with this dual-bladed sword and his armor and all of that kind of thing, we have to imagine he's probably been fighting with this thing for like 20-25 years potentially. Like he looks like he's quite old, you know, he looks like he's seen a few wars, so we can assume that he's probably been fighting longer than we can give him credit for. Definitely longer than what Iron Man and Cap has been fighting for. You know, Thor's been fighting for thousands of years. So no, I do believe that he has the power to do that with that weapon. And we see that weapon shatter Cap's shield. And we have seen Cap's shield survive so much, including a hit from Thor's hammer in the first Avengers. So that says to me, you know, you have to line all these things up. You have to say, okay, Cap's shield can survive Mjolnir. Thanos' sword can break Cap's shield. That means Thanos' weapon, potentially, is more powerful than Mjolnir.
Yeah.
Now imagine that. Imagine Thanos with Mjolnir. Does that change your perspective a little bit more to say, okay, yeah, maybe I can understand it? Don't get me wrong. It maybe still is a little bit of a stretch that he could take on all 3 at once and bat them away like they were nothing. He even takes on Captain Marvel and just like bats her away a couple of times. It does seem like he is conveniently powerful sometimes for the plot, but I feel like it's a little bit disingenuous to say that it's unrealistic.
Well, I mean, it's not like we don't see his army or anything later on either. Like, I think that we're coming back again to the sort of the Nebula problem. Do they know? Do they not? Kind of thing. Like, I know that he's obviously got the knowledge of the Avengers, but at the same time, because he doesn't get exactly much exposure in the Marvel movies until Infinity War. Like, truly,
yeah, I agree.
Anything could have been happening in that time between when we first see him and Infinity War, or even Endgame, you know. So because I think they can get away with that because it's a universe, you know. It's such a large space that is being inhabited in this sort of fiction. To try and figure out every single parameter is you would just be here for years. And especially consider it like trying to figure out logic in something that, you know, is still made by human beings. It's not like we've kind of moved these movies or made these movies in any different way than we would sort of before. I think it's because that is probably where the limits of making a universe come, because obviously these movies are still only, even though Endgame is like 3 hours and 10 minutes, it's still not, it's not 6 hours, it's not 12 hours, you know, and a universe is something that's just so like hard to conceptualize alone. But the fact that we get a sort of insight into it because of these movies is just amazing.
That's right. I mean, yeah, given enough time, I'm sure we would have had a bloody Thanos solo movie where we see him like waging war across the galaxy. You know, he's got an army, yeah, but you've got to imagine he must come from humble beginnings. You don't just get an army. He must have proven that he's really, really powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if he is the single most powerful creature that can walk on an Earth. You know, I'm sure there's gods and stuff which are more powerful than him, but I think he probably is one of the most powerful creatures in the universe. And then he got the Infinity Stones, and then he just becomes cosmic levels of power.
Well, it sort of happens so exponential. His power is something that is revealed sort of very carefully. Like, how we see a tiny snippet of him in Avengers, then we get a little bit more in Guardians. And then when it's finally actually comes to it and he's, you know, pretty much handing it to the Hulk, you then...
Right, exactly.
How can you doubt the power of Thanos? All beg before him, you know?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You've got to think that the first time we see him in action, he doesn't defeat the Hulk. He dominates the Hulk. I can fully believe that he could have taken on Thor at the same time, and, you know, it would have been a fair fight, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have that much of a problem with that fighting sequence. I hope that sort of maybe settles your quandary a little bit, because I know a lot of people do have a problem with that. I've seen it multiple times of, well, you know, Thor's got Stormbreaker. Isn't that meant to be the Thanos killing weapon? Well, yeah, it was, but in Infinity War, Thanos wasn't trying to kill Thor. You know,
they can just throw the different timeline phrase at you, and you can't really rebut it.
That's right. I mean, I can throw at them. Well, remember that Thor is like fat now, so he probably isn't as good a fighter as he was 5 years ago or something. You know, it gets into nitpicking territory, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was most impressed by Cap in that particular fight sequence with
terrifically.
You know, the hammer and the shield, like.
I think most people have told me that their favorite scene is when that hammer lifts up, and the camera follows it, and he just grabs it, and everyone's like, finally, like, oh my god, like it happened. I think, you know, I can guarantee that 99% of all cinemas reacted to that moment.
Definitely.
And you're right, hammer and shield. I got a moment of thinking, oh my god, like, Cap has been fighting this whole time without a weapon. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I know, right? And the weirdest thing is, as well, is that they even, despite him not having a weapon of any kind, his movies, especially Winter Soldier and Civil War, are some of the better Marvel movies. And
Agreed.
They're probably most interesting because of his limitations, despite being the result of a sort of Frankenstein-esque scenario that made him super powerful. But obviously it doesn't really make a monster, and I think that is something that never really got touched on in the first movie. But I mean, they weren't, we don't talk about that one because it wasn't made by the Russo brothers, and now that we have to bow down to them after their brilliant display of Avengers movies.
That's right. But I mean, it had to happen though, didn't it? I mean, the fact that Cap is now out of these movies, they had to complete the cycle of showing that he was worthy in the end.
Yeah.
Because we get the little snippet in Age of Ultron. And of course, comic book people know that, yeah, he can lift the hammer. He does have that capability. And it was nice to see that happen. Because I'll say, when he summons Mjolnir, when he's back on Asgard, and he's like, haha, I'm still worthy. And then he teleports back. And in that moment, I was like, wait a minute, what? You just stole Mjolnir. Why did you do that? I was so confused. I was like, why has he done that? But then obviously the reason is for the payoff at the end with Captain America.
Yeah.
I was reverted back to an absolute kid when they're on the battlefield and I saw all the golden circles starting to appear. I don't know if it was just because there was so much going on, but what I thought was, I was like, oh my god, they're alive. Of course, Doctor Strange is alive. Of course he's coming. I was pleasantly surprised that everyone was now going to join. I didn't expect it. And I know I should have, but I didn't.
Well, you know, I was thinking when I saw that because going into this, all of my speculation was quite heavily revolved around Doctor Strange. Like, I thought he was going to be quite
pivotal.
Pivotal into unwinding it all. And he's not pivotal in the same way that I imagined it, I think, because obviously without his like opening of the portals, we wouldn't have had that glorious battle at the end, and they wouldn't have probably won. So he is pivotal in that sense, but the actual unraveling obviously never really came in the way that we would expect it, which is exactly what I wanted out of this movie. Because if it was predictable, I probably would have come away from it being very unhappy.
So, did you not predict Tony Stark's demise?
No.
Until it happened. Because I remember I was telling you, wasn't I, that I believed that Iron Man was going to die in Infinity War when he had that one-on-one with Thanos, and Thanos is like fighting him. I was sat in the cinema thinking, oh my god, this is it. My favorite hero is about to die, but I'm ready. And then it didn't happen. Expectation subversion on my part. I was really baited by that. But even though he didn't die in Infinity War, I was sold. I was 100%. I was like, he's going to die in Endgame. He has to. There's no way that they come out of this without some form of, payment being made. And I said, yeah.
Payment of lives.
That's it. You have to. There's no way that you can have the stakes that high and everyone survive. And in my mind, I had it as either Iron Man or Captain America would die. And I thought, but they won't have them both die, because if they have them both die, then it'll take away from each of their deaths. But I tell you what, I'm so glad that I was wrong, because the way that they did send off Captain America was absolutely perfect. I couldn't have thought of that. In a movie where they kill Iron Man, for them to kill off Captain America, but in a really nice way, was the perfect way, I think. I'm glad that those two have moved on, because I think it was right for them both to move on. I just didn't think that there'd be enough room for them both to move on, because I didn't want to detract from either of their deaths. But I thought Iron Man was definitely going to go, 100%.
That's interesting. I honestly, I'm at the point now, especially after watching Infinity War for the first time, like I could imagine any of them just being killed, and it wouldn't. I wouldn't doubt its sincerity, if that makes sense. Like if anybody did die, it would probably serve the narrative well, because in my mind, this is like the last Marvel movie, and it'll probably be the last one that I go and see. I'm not really planning on going and seeing Spider-Man, to be honest. But the fact that because it is in my mind, last one, any characters that do die are like it.
Permanent.
It is a perma ban for those particular players.
Iron Man has left the server.
Yeah.
I will say though, they did get me a couple of times, because Iron Man and Thanos are fighting, and Thanos bats Iron Man away, leaving only Thanos and Cap at that moment fighting, and Cap's shield gets shattered by the sword. And that, I don't know if you'll remember this, but that reminded me of Age of Ultron. In the beginning, Tony Stark has a vision of all of the Avengers dead, except from him. And Captain America's shield is shattered on that vision. And Cap says to him, you could have done more. That's what he says to Tony in that vision. And so when I saw the shield get shattered, I had like a pang in my heart of like, oh, it's not Iron Man. It's going to be Cap. Cap's going to die. That's what this means. That's why the shield has been shattered. It is Tony's vision coming true. And then they got me again with another expectation subversion. It ended up not being Cap. I mean, I know he does go, but he doesn't get horrifically murdered. It's Iron Man who has to be it. And again, the subversion came again when, Doctor Strange gives him the sign, doesn't he? Iron Man gets up and he's ready to go again. And he looks at Doctor Strange in that moment, and Doctor Strange looks back and he lifts his finger up. And I was just like, fuck. This is it. Because he says to him, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen. But even though he said that to him, he still gave him the heads up. And and Iron Man's like,
thought of it that way.
All right. Well, you know what that means, right? Because it took me a while, because I thought he was pointing up. But do you understand what he was actually doing? Or what I think he was actually doing?
Well, what do you think he was actually doing?
I think when he lifts his finger up, he's showing Tony one in 15 million. This is it.
And what was that in relation to?
Well, you've got to get in there and fight Thanos, and you're going to die, but this is the 1 in 15 million. This is it. We've made it this far. Don't fuck it up.
What was the number in relation to? Is that what Tony had calculated earlier on?
No, in Infinity War, when Doctor Strange comes back from all the alternate timelines, he says, I've just been to 15,300,000 alternate timelines. And Tony says to him, and how many did we win? And Strange says, 1.
Okay. Do you know, I'd completely forgotten about that one bit of dialogue.
You are useless.
I don't pay that much attention to these movies, man. They're not designed for that kind of thing. I'm sure there are people that are far more into it. Well, it's a good
thing I am here, isn't
exactly. I know that you appreciate these movies far more than I do, and it's definitely evident. But like, I'm just relaying my experience in the same way that like your hot fiery ass is going on about it is great though. Like like I say, it's bringing everything back because it is a long movie. There's a lot to take in, and because of your strangely photographic memory, this is probably gonna keep the conversations, what would you say, momentum going, because like we could have essentially talked about the movie. I mean, we do kind of jump back and forth anyway, but the fact that it's been kind of almost chronological is probably going to make this a better listen, and I'm sure I would be very interested to hear if other people think that is the case or not. I mean,
I'm sure we'll get their insightful opinions.
We'll get shredded.
I would like to say, though, I have only seen this movie once. I'm not one of these mad people who went and saw it 7 times or anything like that.
I've only seen it once as well, and I've seen it more recently than you, and yet, like, that's just a testament to how bad I am at remembering, like, things that happen in movies. I think I'm probably so used to kind of coming out and saying like what a general opinion is of the movie. I mean, maybe I just consume far too many pieces of media that I now have got it into my head that like I can generalize and have a consensus on something without talking about every single itty bitty part of it, unless I've watched it again in preparation for making like a Did It Suck or an analysis or something.
Your love for the halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind and addled your brain.
Perhaps.
Said Saruman to Gandalf once upon a time. That is all
nice
I'll
analogy.
say.
Thank you.
But interestingly, I was going to make this comparison. I did feel like it was a Return of the King style battle. It was just non-stop, wasn't it?
No, that was exactly what I thought. Return of the King kind of thing. When now that you mention it, actually,
because all this crap is going on, and you know, it is messy, and you probably would have to watch it 4 or 5 times to really absorb absolutely everything that goes on. You know, switching between all these different characters. You see all the sorcerers, even Valkyrie on her Pegasus comes down.
I remember the Pegasus.
Yeah, right. It's funny what you do remember, and then you get Pepper Potts turn up in the really cool Iron Man suit, and you know, they have like a team up with Iron Man. You know, you see them both fighting together, which was nice. And, you know, you see, Groot and everyone's there.
Everyone's back.
Doctor Strange doesn't get a limelight moment. He's too busy holding back a fuck ton of water for some reason. I was a bit disappointed at that. I loved Doctor Strange fighting in Infinity War. Yeah, he didn't do anything. He just held up a load of water. But
there I was saying he was pivotal.
Where he was in the background, wasn't he? He stopped them all drowning.
You know, in fairness, if he hadn't have been doing that, I mean, like
they'd
all of a sudden they'd all be underwater.
That's it. Yeah. He was the most important character that we didn't get to see. How long do you think that fight was, though? I mean, it was easily at least 30 minutes of solid fighting, wasn't it?
I got completely lost in the actual amount of time, like. When I was watching it, I couldn't really.
Did you feel like it was a long movie?
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that it was a long movie, but only.
I did too. I felt it.
I often feel it more when I need to go to the loo, like in the middle of a movie. Like, if this one, I strategically...
You didn't take precautions?
No, no, this is what I'm saying. I strategically decided to have a tiny little coffee, and that would be all I drank for the whole movie. Didn't have any water or anything, and so that I didn't need to go to the loo.
Good, because I was certainly glued to my seat for that last hour. That last hour was incredible.
Well, there is also the fact that in the in the IMAX theater, we were sat right in the middle, in the middle of a long row, and to get out, we would have had to have got in the way of at least 10 people on either side.
Yeah, you are forced in.
Yeah.
So, now sort of really getting to the end bits, like, did we like Iron Man's sacrifice? How were you feeling in that moment?
Absolutely fine. It served what it needed to serve. I think that it was really nice though, because obviously all we had before, if anything ever did happen to Iron Man, all we would have would be Miss Potts. And honestly, the fact that they've now got a child really instantiates how horrible it's going to be for her. Like he kind of takes it on the chin, not on the chin. He takes it really well, like knowing his destiny. But like that is also playing in the back of my mind that he's got this adorable little kid over this time that they are essentially wanting to undo, and that conflict of interest is probably what amalgamated my very emotional response to Iron Man's death.
Yeah, and it really is a nice scene, and it really is a conflict of interest because he has such a personality change in this movie. You know, that 5-year gap totally changes the character of Tony Stark, but that's sort of the point, isn't it? You know, Tony is the antithesis of Thanos. They're the same person. They're the two sides of the same coin. One's just maniacally, psychotically evil, and the other one is trying to do all of those things for good. And it sort of felt like that if he had won and not died, he would have gone on to be a good man and a good father. And it's almost like, you know, how they say with the Soul Stone, a soul for a soul. And I sort of got that impression with this, in that if you want to kill Thanos, you have to die too. You can't win. You can't win both. You can't go on to be a good man and kill Thanos. Yeah. If you want Thanos to die, you have to die with him. The arrogant, cocksure Tony Stark has to die before he gets the opportunity to become a good man, which is what he would have been. Sort of that catch-22 of do you not type thing. And I thought it was really nice that they died at the same time for both Thanos and Tony, because he obviously clicks and he's taken with him. And it was also nice that they elongated it out to make it be like, you know, this was definitely it. And then I swear to God, like I got like a smile of glee when I started hearing his voice as like the overlay. And I was thinking, oh, you know, this is him being a narrator. And then it wasn't. It was, he'd done a recording. Because of course he did. Because he's goddamn Tony Stark.
Maybe this is the film industry trying to warn Elon Musk not to fly too close to the sun.
In fear of the wings getting burnt. That's, you know, I'm so glad you just brought that up. That's perfect. Tony Stark is Icarus, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
He grew wings in the Iron Man suit. He started everything. Yeah. And it's like what Vision says in, I think in Civil War. He says, ever since Iron Man revealed himself, the amount of calamities has skyrocketed. And now the calamity is too much. And they couldn't do it without his sacrifice. And so he had to burn. And he did so beautifully, I think.
Definitely.
Which then led perfectly into the second Captain America. How do we feel about that one?
Do you want my genuine feelings, or do you want like my I've listened to what a bunch of other people have said about it, and it might have changed my opinion on it somewhat.
Oh, well, I mean, I think they're both relevant. I think I want to hear what you thought of when you were leaving the cinema, and then whether what people had to say on the internet changed it for good or for worse.
Well, I think this is definitely a point of discussion, though, is that, like, had I not had all of these outlets giving their opinions on the movie, would I have enjoyed it more in the long run? And I think this is probably because of, like, the fact that they set out from the start saying this is going to, any time travel is not going to affect the present, like in the sort of Back to the Future sense. And yet Captain America didn't go off into a different timeline. He went back in time, lived out his life, and then is still there in the same timeline universe. See, this is even getting confusing to try and describe. Like, the logic of it to me doesn't seem particularly grounded, and at the same time, I thought just imagining the two of them living their life out together and growing old is beautiful to me. Like, all of those really annoying scenes where we saw Carter old and, you know, dying, are now basically sort of, what would you say, transformed and improved, because now they aren't actually what happened in this universe, because he probably would have sat by her side until she died instead of it being the younger self going and seeing her. You know what I mean?
I do. And I couldn't agree more. It is a shame that they had to ruin the time travel thing with it. But at the same time, while I recognized it, I pushed that thought, that sort of toxic thought, away. I was like, go away for now, because this is really beautiful. And I thought it was lovely. And as I said earlier, it was the perfect way to send off Cap without killing him. Yeah. And it didn't detract from Tony Stark at all. And I thought it was really well done. And just having that silent scene of, you know, typical 1940s, 1950s music, and them just like dancing together. And we're reminded of that, you know, that's what they wanted to do. She said, you know, I want to go dancing with you. And he's like, well, you know, I'm going to need a rain check. And he manages to do it and have it happen, and it eventually goes on. So I think that was well done, wasn't it? It
almost, for some reason, I don't know why, it felt very Forrest Gumpy. Like, maybe it's just because the you know, the main part of it is set on a bench, but the fact that it kind of, it for some reason reminded me of that. I don't ask me why, but in the same sort of emotional resonance as that film was able to capture with a bench as well. It's a nice thing to. It's a nice location to send off Cap, I think, as well, because it kind of encapsulates this lovely image of Central Park in New York, where you have all of these benches that are right around this massive bit of water. That I know that they love to film that bit and put them in Hollywood movies. And that's where I think that sort of connection has come from, because it's like, it's a nod to the medium saying thanks for, you know, letting us tell this story, I think.
Yeah. And it is just a shame that they had to sacrifice the time travel motive that they had in order to have this scene. I mean, I don't see why they couldn't have just had him, because it would have worked. It would have stayed canon, if you will, if he had appeared as an old man on the pad.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been just as great, because, you know, they would have had a quippy line about, oh, Hulk, you've ruined it again, just like you did with Ant-Man. You've brought him back as an old man. And then Bucky could have been like, no, you know, this is it. And then Falcon could have like turned his head and looked at him, have the face of surprise, and be like, Cap. And then, you know, he could nod and be like, yeah, man, I had a good life. And then all the tears start happening because everyone starts working it out. And I think that would have worked just as well. So, yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone that the movie's ruined, literally unwatchable, because they didn't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, they could have done something a bit better.
I think, I definitely enjoyed that emotionally more than like
exactly.
But I think that's probably the whole point, isn't it? You go into the movies to have these emotional experiences, and it's only because of hindsight and being able to report back on movies in ways that we've never been able to before.
Yeah,
that we're able to kind of suss out all the problems of absolutely everything. Maybe Game of Thrones has been ruined by the same sort of mentality of just having everything figured out before the end.
It's true.
And that just about rounds up Act 3, I think. Were there any other little tidbits that you wanted to talk about? Because I think after the amount of time that we've spent talking about this now, I think we've pretty much covered everything that we possibly could.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about more things, you know, the advent of Captain Marvel in the finale and, you know, other scenes that were great to look at and stuff like that. But I think we'd end up talking for longer than the movie's runtime if we keep going on for too long. And I'm not sure
That's
how
true.
much our audience wants to listen to us and what is an acceptable amount of time to listen to us. I hope that it has been enjoyable. I suppose the only thing that I would like to pay credit to, interestingly, is the lack of the end credits scene. And I don't know did you wait around till the very end?
Well, I found out that there wasn't an end credit scene before I went and saw it.
Tragedy.
Honestly, it was actually a blessing to be told that. I'm perfectly fine with them, you know, teasing other projects and the like, but I don't want to be teased for any future Marvel projects. I've stuck around with it for long enough. I'm fine with like there being absolutely none.
So
especially after sitting through 3 hours.
So did you watch the normal credits then, where they had all the artistic signatures and then you just left when the roll started?
Yes, when the mountains of digital artists are put in front of me.
Well, that's good, because I really do appreciate the artistic Marvel credits. I watched them all anyway, and obviously I didn't know that there wasn't an end credit scene. But for your completion's sake, there is something. There is a little something. I don't know if you were told at the very end. It really is nothing, but there is something.
Clink, clink, clink.
That's
clink.
right. You can hear the echoes of Iron Man's creation, which I thought was interesting. I would never have, if someone had said to me, oh yeah, there's like a little nod to Iron Man at the very end, I would never have guessed it would be that. I would have thought maybe like they would have shown like a lighting up of the arc reactor or something like that. But I thought that was I'm not sure if it was correct, but it was definitely tasteful. It was definitely different, artistic, that kind of stuff. But
it would have been I think the novelty kind of wore off because we saw like, I know this is just a purely artistic comment over anything that relates to story, but when you see the signatures, like in the background of Robert Downey Jr.'s signature, you see him doing the whacking. And it's well, so we have to see it and we have to hear it just in case we weren't sad enough.
I was so glad they left his signature till last, though, as the ultimate. Like, he was the one who started it. Now, this it is kind of sad in a way. Like you said, it would be nice to think that this was the last Marvel movie,
but it's not.
No. I do have high hopes for the next arc because I think I know where they're going to go with it.
Oh no, the next arc.
That's right. I just don't know whether they're going to do it over a 5-year period, a 10-year period, or hell, if they're going to do it in like a 2-year period. I don't know.
Do you know how many they've got confirmed so far?
No, I have no idea.
I only know that there's a Spider-Man.
Yeah, all I know is that Spider-Man's in, that there's a second Doctor Strange, and I think that is all I'm aware of. Oh, I think they've got another Black Panther. Yeah, those are the only three that I know of, though. I think right now.
What about another Captain Marvel? I'd love to see one of those.
I mean, they do need to seriously do some work on her. I haven't heard anything about that, though, but she's only just been done, so I can't imagine we'll see her for at least another year.
No.
However...
What about... Oh, go on.
Oh, I was going to make a nice outro segue there, but...
Oh, but we haven't mentioned the cherry on the cake, Max.
Yeah? Oh?
I'm even surprised you didn't mention the final Stan Lee cameo.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I was kind of disappointed that they didn't do that. You know how in Captain Marvel, they had all of his cameos within the Marvel logo, and then they had the thank you Stan?
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do that for Endgame, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't. But
no.
Yeah, the final Stan Lee cameo. What a
best damn one.
Yeah, what a man. Hey, what a boy.
Still the comedic genius.
Yeah.
Posthumously.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Sorry.
It's a shame we're not going to see him again. It sort of was it was the thing, wasn't it? It was the done thing in Marvel movies. You always had the Stan Lee.
The Easter egg.
Now it'll be Robert Downey Jr.
Oh no.
No, it won't.
Oh no. Robert Downey Jr.'s ghost. Tony Stark's suit flying around all by itself.
That's right.
And then we have Ultron. We'll go for your outro then. I'm curious.
Oh well,
to hear
it's ruined now.
I've ruined it now.
Well, what was it? We said something like, it was like he said, I don't expect to see Captain Marvel for like another year, and I was going to be like, but what you can expect potentially is more of these podcasts if these are something that are your I'm not doing that your loving audience. Appreciated. I think you should take the reins in saying a bit about this.
Well, sure. Yeah, we've been kind of recording these on and off for about a month, maybe 2, maybe 3. I'm not even sure now. Just sort of because we have a lot of discussions about Marvel movies, and it was Max himself who got me into watching every bloody one of them, much to many of them being a total waste of time. But, you know, maybe we'll jump onto those at some point. Who knows? This is now where I throw it to you guys and say if there are any potential movies that you want us to talk about, be they Marvel or be they not, we are more than willing to oblige. We just want to know whether this is the kind of media that is going to be received well or not, just because everyone else seems to be doing a podcast. But I probably shouldn't really say that, because then everyone will be like, oh, but podcasts are the best thing in the world. How dare you? Now I'm going off on a tangent entirely.
We really want to know the good and the bad, don't we? I mean, if there's anything that, if you guys like this, but you think it could be improved in some way, tell us. If you think this was too long, you know, definitely tell us, because I know Endgame is a big chunk of something, but this one has gone on for quite a while compared to the other ones. The other ones that we've recorded only last about an hour and a half. So if that is something that you'd be more keen for, those are definitely in the works. But yeah, we definitely want to know if you guys like this and if you want this to continue happening, or what could be improved.
But we've already recorded Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther,
Spider-Man.
and the Spider-Man. Was there any others?
Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, Doctor Strange.
And Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah, so those are the ones that we've actually got down and recorded, and obviously this is all pre-Endgame, so it would be very, you know, there's a lot of speculation for Endgame as well, sort of riddled through these conversations that we have. So if you would be interested to hear those, let us know.
But also, now that the Marvel train has sort of come to the end, even if we release these other Marvel podcasts, if you will, it would be nice to know what else you guys would like us to perhaps watch and discuss. I know that in the past I've been me and Harry go all the way back to college at the start of his channel, and I know since then he's always had requests for certain movies to go on, like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. If you have any ideas of what you'd like us to hear, post them in the comments and then upvote those comments so then we can see them, and perhaps we'll do it on them if it all goes well.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Well, I couldn't have wrapped it up better myself. Yeah, like we say, let us know what you think, and we'll see you when we post another one of these, I suppose.
And that was us catching up on the Catching Up podcast.
We could end it like that. We could literally end it like that.
Let's
Perfect.